The morning sun stretched over Manhattan, washing the skyline in gold. Down in the quieter part of the city, the gates of Ridgeway Academy gleamed, tall black iron crowned with letters of gold. Cars lined up the driveway, black SUVs, sleek sedans and polished limousines. Parents in designer suits hurried their children through the gates, while the sound of laughter and expensive shoes echoed off the marble columns of the school entrance. Among them stood a little girl who didn't belong. Kayla Brooks gripped the strap of her worn backpack with trembling fingers. Her dress, once yellow, had faded into a pale beige. She shifted her feet, trying to ignore how her toes poked out from her scuffed shoes. Around her, children her age skipped by in crisp uniforms, their hair neatly tied with ribbons, their lunches packed in glossy boxes that matched their smiles. Kayla's heart pounded. Her mother had promised her that today would be special, her first day at a real school. Not the crowded public one across town, but this one, the one her mom called the kind of place that changes lives. Her mother, Maria, had worked extra shifts for months to save enough for the admission deposit. But when Kayla reached the gate, the security guard looked at her like she didn't exist. "Excuse me, miss," the man said, his voice flat. "You can't stand here." Kayla held up the envelope her mother gave her. "I'm supposed to go to class," she said softly. The man frowned, glancing at the school crest stamped on the paper. He scanned it, then shook his head. "This says pending payment. You're not registered." Kayla's throat tightened. She didn't know what pending payment meant. She only knew her mom promised her everything was okay. My mom said," she tried, but her voice cracked. Behind her, a woman in heels muttered, "Why is she here? Someone call the office." Kayla's stomach twisted. She felt every pair of eyes on her, judging, whispering. She wanted to disappear. The guard sighed and took a step closer. "I'm sorry, kiddo, but you can't stay here unless your name's on the list." Kayla looked up at the gate, at the golden words shining above. Ridgeway Academy, shaping tomorrow's leaders. Her lips quivered. And then, in the smallest whisper, a whisper that carried her heartbreak to the morning air, she said, "I'm poor, so they won't let me in." The guard blinked, not sure what to say. He turned his gaze away, pretending not to hear. Kayla stepped back slowly, clutching the envelope like it was her only shield. The laughter of other children stung her ears. Her eyes filled, but she refused to cry where everyone could see. Across the street, an older woman selling coffee near the corner watched her. She shook her head in pity, muttering to herself, "This world's not fair to the ones who try." Kayla didn't see the car that had just pulled up at the curb, a black Range Rover, polished to a mirror shine. Out stepped a tall man in a navy blue suit, his hair perfectly combed, his watch glinting in the sunlight. He looked like he belonged in a magazine. The kind of man who had never worried about bus fares or overdue bills. His name was David Montgomery. David adjusted his tie and turned to his driver. "Wait here," he said. He looked toward the gates, where parents waved goodbye to their children. His daughter, Emily, sat beside him in the back seat, swinging her legs impatiently. "Daddy, we're late," Emily said, pointing toward the gate. "All my friends are already inside." David smiled faintly. "You'll be fine, sweetheart. Go ahead. I'll walk with you." As they crossed the street, Emily noticed Kayla standing alone by the gate, her head lowered. She tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy, that girl looks sad. Why isn't she going in?" David glanced toward the girl, intending only a polite look, but something in her stopped him cold. Her eyes, wide and unsure, carried a haunting familiarity he couldn't explain. For a moment he froze. He didn't know this child, yet something about her stirred a memory buried deep inside him. Emily's voice pulled him back. "Daddy, can she come play with us?" He cleared his throat. "She probably goes to a different school, sweetie. Come on, we'll be late." But he didn't move. His eyes followed the girl as she shuffled away from the gate, hugging her backpack. Her tiny shoulders trembled as she whispered something he couldn't quite hear. And then she turned just for a second. Their eyes met. For the briefest instant, David felt something strange in his chest. Like a string had been plucked inside him, sending a vibration of guilt and recognition through his veins. He shook it off and looked away, pretending to fix his cufflinks. But even as Emily ran toward the school, his mind stayed with the little girl outside the gate. The guard called after Kayla again. "Hey, you can't stay here. You'll have to go home." Kayla nodded quickly, even though she didn't know where home was right now. Her mother had left early for work, saying she'd pick her up later. She turned, slowly walking down the sidewalk, her backpack bouncing weakly behind her. Every step felt heavy, like each one was proof that she didn't belong anywhere. David's driver opened the car door, waiting for him to get in, but he didn't move. His gaze trailed the girl as she disappeared around the corner. Something inside whispered, "Don't walk away this time." He didn't understand why the thought hit so hard, or what it even meant, but it wouldn't leave him. Inside the gates, Emily waved and called for her dad to hurry. He smiled, forcing himself to focus. "Coming, sweetheart." But even as he walked through those gates, David Montgomery didn't realize that the world he knew was about to unravel, that the little girl who whispered she was too poor to belong was about to open wounds he thought were long buried. And Kayla, with her small voice and bigger heart, had no idea that the man who turned to watch her was the father she had never met. The day had only begun, but fate had already set its pieces in motion. The morning rush at Ridgeway Academy had settled into an organized rhythm. The parade of luxury vehicles had thinned, leaving behind faint echoes of laughter, the scent of perfume, and the crisp sound of polished shoes on stone. The school's grand courtyard looked like a page torn from a magazine. Children from wealthy families chatting beneath marble pillars, parents exchanging firm handshakes before heading off to high-rise offices. Kayla Brooks had vanished around the corner minutes earlier, swallowed by the city noise. But to one man standing near the gates, her small figure still lingered in his mind like an unfinished thought. David Montgomery stood tall beside his Range Rover, eyes following his daughter as she disappeared into the crowd of children. He had a presence that commanded attention even in silence. The cut of his suit, the sharpness of his gaze, the calm way he spoke, it all spoke of power and money. To most people, he was the definition of success. CEO of Montgomery Holdings, a billion-dollar real estate empire built on prestige and perfection. But even empires cast long shadows. He adjusted his tie and glanced toward the street again. The little girl was gone, but the memory of her eyes, brown, deep, uncertain, stayed. It made him uneasy, though he couldn't explain why. He had seen countless faces in his life, but this one had stirred something he hadn't felt in years. "Sir," his driver called, breaking his trance, "shall I head back to the office after dropping you off?" David nodded absently. "Yes, Simon. I won't be long." He began walking toward the gates when his daughter, Emily, came skipping back toward him, her braids bouncing. "Daddy, did you see her?" she said, excitement lighting up her face. He blinked. "See who?" "The girl outside the gate," Emily said. "She was crying. She looked really sad." She lowered her voice. "Can we help her?" David smiled gently, trying to ease her concern. "Not everyone who looks sad needs help, sweetheart." Emily frowned. "That's not true. Mommy says sometimes people look fine and still need it." Her words hit him harder than he expected. His ex-wife, Claire, had a way of teaching Emily lessons that stuck. He sighed, crouching slightly to meet his daughter's gaze. "You have a good heart, Emily. But sometimes people don't want help. Sometimes it's not that simple." Emily looked past him toward the street again. "Still, I wish someone helped her." David followed her gaze. The girl was gone, but her whisper still echoed faintly in his head, or maybe it was just his conscience speaking louder than usual. He didn't know why it bothered him so much. She was a stranger. Just a child he'd never seen before. So why did her pain feel personal? He shook it off and smiled at Emily again. "Go on, sweetheart. Don't be late. She nodded, hugging him tightly before running toward the main entrance. He watched her blend into the stream of students, bright and confident, the opposite of the girl outside those gates. Two children, same age, two entirely different worlds. One born into abundance, the other born into struggle. David turned to leave, but his assistant, Clara, approached him with a folder. "Morning, Mr. Montgomery," she greeted briskly. "The meeting with the investors is moved to 10:30. You'll need to review the proposal beforehand." He nodded, glancing at the folder but not really seeing it. His mind kept wandering back to the girl's small, trembling voice. "Clara," he said suddenly, "how much does it cost to enroll a student here?" She blinked, caught off guard. "At Ridgeway, sir? Around 40,000 a year, not including fees." David let out a low whistle. 40,000 for second grade? Clara shrugged. "Parents pay for the name. Ridgeway opens doors most schools don't." He stared past her at the gates again. "I suppose that's one way to put it." When he got into his car moments later, the reflection on the window caught his attention. The gold lettering above the gate, Ridgeway Academy, shaping tomorrow's leaders. He smirked at the irony. What about the ones who couldn't afford tomorrow? Simon started the car, but David wasn't listening. He stared out the window as they drove away, lost in thought. His phone buzzed. A message from his board reminding him of a partnership proposal that could make his company another $100 million. Normally, the thought of another deal would thrill him. Today it felt meaningless. Somewhere across the city, Maria Brooks was finishing her overnight shift at St. Joseph's Hospital. She had worked 12 hours straight, barely stopping for coffee. Her back ached, and her feet throbbed inside worn sneakers. But her heart was lighter because today, her little girl was supposed to start a new life at Ridgeway Academy. She didn't know what was happening at those gates, not yet. David arrived at his office, greeted by glass walls, skyline views, and assistants moving like clockwork. But he didn't feel the usual surge of pride. He sat at his desk, staring at the city below. Something in his chest felt hollow. His sister, Grace Montgomery, walked in unannounced. She was the opposite of him in every way, warm, impulsive, and unfiltered. "You look like you just saw a ghost," she said, dropping into a chair. David rubbed his temples. "Just thinking." "That's new," she teased, grinning. "What's wrong?" "Another merger falling through." He sighed. "No. A kid." Grace raised a brow. "A kid?" "Outside Ridgeway," he explained. She said something. "I don't know. It stuck with me." Grace leaned forward. "What did she say?" He hesitated. "She said she was poor, so they wouldn't let her in." Grace's smile faded. "That's awful." "I know. I tried to forget it. But she looked familiar." "Familiar how?" Grace pressed. David shook his head. "I can't explain it. Just familiar." Grace studied him for a moment, then said quietly, "You still think about her, don't you?" He frowned. "Who?" "You know who," she said softly. "Maria." The name hung in the air like a shadow. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. The woman he had once loved. The one his parents made sure he left behind. The one who disappeared without a trace. "I haven't thought about her in a long time," he lied. Grace gave him a knowing look. "Right." He didn't answer. His mind drifted back to those brown eyes, the same shade as Maria's. Could it be possible? No. He pushed the thought away, refusing to go down that road. The past was gone. Or at least he had convinced himself it was. Later that evening, after meetings and calls and the endless hum of success, David found himself driving back toward Ridgeway without meaning to. He didn't tell anyone. He just needed to see, to confirm something he couldn't name. The campus was quiet now. The students were gone, the gates locked. But near the fence, he saw something that made his heart tighten. A small, colorful notebook lying in the dirt. He picked it up, brushing off dust. On the cover, written in uneven letters, were the words Kayla Brooks, My dreams. He turned the first page. A childish drawing of a big school, stick figures, and a woman in scrubs holding a little girl's hand. At the bottom of the page were 4 small words. Me and Mommy someday. David stood frozen, the weight of the notebook heavy in his hands. That same pull inside him deepened, an ache that felt like recognition. He slipped the notebook into his coat pocket, unsure why. But as he walked back to his car, he knew this wasn't over. Something told him that the girl who whispered she didn't belong would soon turn his entire world upside down. That night, sleep refused to visit David Montgomery. He lay in the quiet darkness of his penthouse, the city skyline glowing beyond the glass walls. Normally, that view made him feel powerful, a king watching over his kingdom. But tonight it only made him feel small. The little notebook sat on his bedside table. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the cover again. Kayla Brooks, My Dreams. Those 4 words echoed louder than the ticking clock on the wall. He had tried to convince himself it was just guilt, a fleeting emotion stirred by a stranger's hardship. But deep down he knew it wasn't that simple. There was something hauntingly familiar about the name Brooks, something that tugged at an old part of his heart he'd buried years ago. By morning he couldn't take it anymore. He reached for his phone and dialed his assistant. Clara, he said, voice low and tired, I need you to look up a name for me. Of course, sir. What name? Maria Brooks. She used to live in Chicago, I think. Around the South Side. There was a pause. Do you have any other details? David hesitated. She worked in nursing, at least she used to. That's all I remember. Understood. I'll see what I can find. He hung up, his chest tightening. What am I even doing? He thought. He had no reason to dig up the past. But the more he tried to focus on work, the more his thoughts kept circling back to that little girl, to Kayla. Later that afternoon his phone buzzed again. Sir, Clara said, I found something. There's a Maria Brooks registered as a nurse at St. Joseph's Hospital. Single mother. 1 child listed under emergency contact. Kayla Brooks. David froze. The room seemed to tilt slightly as reality settled in. Can't be. But a part of him already knew the truth. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. Memories came flooding in like a storm. A small apartment, laughter, the smell of rain on cracked sidewalks. Maria's smile when she used to tell him, one day love will matter more than money. He had chosen money. Or rather, his family had chosen it for him. Years ago, when his father discovered Maria was pregnant, everything changed. The Montgomerys were a family obsessed with image, reputation first, love second. His father had made it clear, if David wanted his inheritance, he had to clean up his mistakes. He tried to fight back, but Maria disappeared before he could. No forwarding address. No calls. Nothing. Until now. He rubbed his face, the weight of guilt pressing down. He wasn't ready to believe it fully yet, but what if Kayla really was his daughter? That evening, David drove to St. Joseph's Hospital. He didn't know what he'd say or if he'd even find her. The night air was cool, and the smell of rain hinted at an approaching storm. As he walked into the hospital lobby, memories stirred again. The fluorescent lights, the sterile smell, the quiet hum of life and loss all mixed together. At the reception desk, he cleared his throat. Excuse me. I'm looking for a nurse, Maria Brooks. The receptionist typed on her keyboard. She's finishing her shift in 15 minutes. Should I tell her someone's waiting? He hesitated. No. I'll wait here. 15 minutes felt like hours. He sat down, staring at the white walls, his heart thudding louder than the hospital machines around him. Then she appeared. Maria walked out of the corridor, still in her scrubs, her hair pulled back in a loose bun. Time had etched faint lines on her face, but her eyes, those same warm brown eyes, hadn't changed. For a second he couldn't breathe. She didn't notice him at first. She was busy flipping through patient charts. Then as she approached the counter she looked up, and froze. Her hand went still. The chart slipped slightly. "David?" she whispered, disbelief in her voice. He stood, his throat dry. "Maria." For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them. Years of silence, heartbreak, and unspoken questions filled the space between. She blinked rapidly, her voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" He took a cautious step forward. "I didn't plan to find you. He stopped, unsure how to continue. "I saw a little girl at Ridgeway Academy. She said they wouldn't let her in because she was poor. Her name was Kayla Brooks." Maria's breath caught. "You saw Kayla?" He nodded slowly. She dropped her notebook. He reached into his coat and held it out. "I didn't mean to intrude." Her hand trembled as she took it. "You shouldn't have this." "I know," he said softly. "But when I saw her, Maria, something in me—" He stopped again, voice breaking slightly. "She looks so much like you." Maria's eyes shimmered. "Don't?" He looked at her, confused. "Don't what?" "Don't come back into our lives after all this time," she said, her tone sharp now. "You had your chance, David. You chose them. You chose your money, your family name, your empire. We learned to survive without you." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know where you went. I looked for you." "Not hard enough," she said coldly. The silence that followed felt heavy, painful. He couldn't blame her. Every word she said was true. Finally, he said quietly, "Is she mine?" Maria looked away, tears threatening. "What difference would it make now?" "All the difference in the world," he whispered. She shook her head. "Kayla doesn't need a billionaire father. She needs someone who shows up. Someone who stays." Her words struck deep. For a man who built skyscrapers, he suddenly felt smaller than ever. "Maria, please," he said, his voice low, desperate. "Let me at least know her. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want—" She cut him off. "You don't get to want anything anymore." She turned to leave, clutching the notebook to her chest. But just before disappearing through the corridor doors, she said something that froze him in place. "She doesn't know," Maria whispered. "She doesn't know who you are. And she can't. Not now. Not ever." And with that, she was gone. David stood there, motionless, her words echoing in his head. The cold truth hit him. The little girl who whispered she was poor had no idea that the man standing before her that morning was her father. He left the hospital in silence, the night swallowing him whole. But as he drove through the rain-soaked streets, one thought consumed him completely. He wasn't going to walk away this time. Maria sat on the edge of her bed that night, her hands gripping Kayla's small notebook as if it were the only thing holding her together. The tiny apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside. Kayla was fast asleep, curled beneath a faded blanket. Her little chest rose and fell softly, her lips parting just enough to reveal a missing tooth. She looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos her mother's heart carried. But Maria couldn't sleep. Not after seeing him. David Montgomery. The man she had once loved so fiercely. The man who had promised her the world, only to let that world take everything from her. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead, memories flooding back like waves she'd tried to drown for years. They met when she was 23, working as a nurse's aide at St. Joseph's Hospital. He was charming, brilliant, and nothing like the arrogant men from her neighborhood. David had been volunteering there then, part of a community initiative to impress his father's board, though he rarely mentioned that. He used to sneak into the nurses' lounge with her during lunch breaks, sharing jokes, sharing dreams. They'd talk about the kind of life they wanted, simple, real, full of love. He had once told her, "I don't want my family's money. I want something that's mine." And she believed him. But then the truth came. His father found out about them, and everything changed overnight. She could still hear the echo of that phone call in her mind. "Maria, I can't see you anymore." Those were his last words before he vanished. 2 weeks later, she learned she was pregnant. Maria wiped a tear before it fell. It had taken years to rebuild herself, to build a life for Kayla, a small, humble life, but one filled with love. And now he had returned like a ghost. Her heart warred with itself. One part wanted to hate him, to protect her daughter from the pain he had caused. Another part wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had changed. But she couldn't take that risk. Not when the price would be Kayla's heart. The next morning, Kayla bounced around their small kitchen, humming as she packed her worn backpack. "Mommy, do you think they'll let me in today if I ask nice?" Maria forced a smile, trying to mask her fear. "Sweetheart, remember what I told you? Ridgeway is special. It's not easy to get in. But I'm special too," Kayla said proudly, adjusting the ribbon in her hair. "You always say so." Maria knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "You're more special than anyone there, baby. But sometimes the world doesn't see it right away." Kayla tilted her head. "So we just have to make them see it?" Maria smiled faintly. "Something like that." Kayla's optimism was a light Maria couldn't let the world dim. She walked her to the bus stop, heart heavy. She didn't notice the black SUV parked across the street, or the man sitting inside quietly watching. David hadn't planned to follow them. But after that night, something inside him refused to rest. He needed to see Kayla again, not as a billionaire, not as a stranger, but as her father, even if she never knew it. He watched as Maria held her daughter's hand, her movements soft and protective. It was a scene he'd missed, a life that could have been his if he'd fought harder. When the bus pulled away, Maria stood for a while, staring after it, shoulders slumped. The weight of years pressed down on her small frame, and David's heart ached. He realized then how much she had carried alone. He stayed in the car long after she disappeared inside the hospital. Guilt gnawed at him until he finally reached for his phone. "Clara," he said, his voice tense. "I want to know everything about Kayla Brooks, her school records, where she lives, everything." Discreetly. There was hesitation on the other end. "Sir, is that legal?" "I'm not asking you to break the law," he said sharply. Then, softer, "just find out what you can." When the call ended, he leaned back in the seat, staring at his reflection in the tinted window. He didn't recognize the man looking back, desperate, restless, almost afraid. At St. Joseph's, Maria worked double shifts that week, hoping exhaustion would drown her thoughts. But every time she turned a corner, she half expected to see him again. Her coworker, Nurse Rachel, noticed her distraction. "You okay, Maria? You've been spaced out all morning." Maria hesitated. "Just tired." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Tired looks different on you. Come on, spill." Maria sighed. "Someone from my past showed up. Someone I thought was gone forever." Rachel smirked. "An ex?" Maria gave a small, bitter laugh. "Something like that." Rachel nudged her playfully. "Girl, if he's back after all these years, maybe it's fate." Maria's smile vanished. "Or punishment." Rachel blinked. "That bad?" Maria didn't answer. Instead, she focused on rearranging the medical charts, hoping her trembling hands wouldn't give her away. But later that evening, when she returned home, she found something that froze her blood cold. An envelope on her doorstep. No name. No stamp. Inside was a photo. A candid shot of her and Kayla waiting for the bus that morning. Maria's breath caught. Her hands shook as she pulled out the second photo. Kayla standing outside Ridgeway's gates, her eyes sad but hopeful. Her heart raced. She turned the envelope over and saw a note in clean, familiar handwriting. "You and Kayla deserve more than this. DM." She sank to her knees, clutching the paper. A swirl of fear and anger rushed through her. How dare he follow them? How dare he step back into their lives after everything he had done? But beneath the fear was something more dangerous. Hope. Because a part of her, a small fragile part, still remembered the man he used to be. That night, as rain began to fall, Maria sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the photo again. She knew she should tear it up, throw it away, erase any trace of him. But instead, she slipped it into Kayla's notebook. She didn't know why. Maybe because deep down she wanted her daughter to know where she came from, even if that truth would one day break them both. Outside, under the cover of the storm, David's car idled quietly across the street. He could see the faint glow of light from their small apartment window. Maria's shadow moved past the curtain, and he caught sight of Kayla dancing in the background, carefree, spinning in circles, pretending to be a princess. He smiled sadly, whispering to himself, "You already are." But as he turned to leave, his phone buzzed again, Clara's message lighting up the screen. "Found something you should see. Hospital records confirm Maria's daughter was born 8 years ago. But sir, the date lines up exactly with when you and Maria last spoke." David's grip tightened on the phone. He didn't need a DNA test to know the truth anymore. Kayla Brooks was his daughter, and nothing in the world could keep him from her now. Days passed, but peace never returned to Maria's life. Every shadow outside her window, every sound in the hallway made her heart skip. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, and deep down she already knew who it was. David Montgomery. The man who once held her heart was now circling her world again, unseen but felt in every corner of her life. At the hospital, she tried to bury herself in work, moving from patient to patient with forced calm. But even the familiar routine couldn't silence the storm inside her. Every time her phone buzzed, she half feared it would be him. And then one evening it was. She froze when she saw his name flash on the screen. He had never called her before. For a long moment, she just stared, torn between anger and something she refused to name. Finally, she answered. "Maria." His voice came, calm but heavy with emotion. "Please don't hang up." She said nothing. Her silence spoke volumes. "I know you're angry," he continued. "You have every right to be. But I need to talk to you, in person." "There's nothing to talk about," she said flatly. "You've made enough choices for both of us." "This isn't about us anymore," he said quietly. "It's about Kayla." Her breath caught. "Leave her out of this." "I can't," he said. "She's my daughter too." Maria's grip on the phone tightened. "You lost that right the day you walked away." "I didn't walk away," he said. "I was forced to." "Don't," she snapped. "Don't rewrite history, David. I was there. I remember every word, every silence, every night I cried wondering why I wasn't enough." The line went quiet. She could hear him exhale, slow, regretful. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," he finally said. "But you can't keep her from knowing the truth forever." "She doesn't need to know the truth," Maria said, voice trembling now. "She needs to feel safe." "And she will," he promised. "I just want to be part of her life, even if she doesn't know who I am." Maria's chest tightened. "That's not how it works." "Then tell me how it does," he said. "Because right now I don't know what's right anymore. All I know is I can't pretend she doesn't exist." Before she could reply, a patient called her name from down the hall. It was the perfect escape. She took it. "I have to go," she said quickly, and hung up before he could say more. But as she slipped her phone back into her pocket, she couldn't shake the tremor in her hands. His voice, it had sounded different this time. Softer. Honest. The kind of tone that once made her believe in forever. She hated that part of her still wanted to believe it again. Across town, David sat in his office, staring out the window. His phone still in his hand, her last words echoing in his mind. He had everything a man could want. Wealth, reputation, power. Yet right now, all he could think about was the little girl who didn't even know his name. A knock came at the door. His sister Grace stepped in with a knowing look. "You've been quiet," she said, closing the door behind her. "I don't like quiet from you. It usually means trouble." He smiled faintly. "You were right." Grace raised a brow. "About what?" "Kayla," he said softly. "She's mine." Grace's expression softened. "Oh, David." He looked away. I don't know what to do. Maria hates me, and she has every reason to. But I can't just watch from a distance. Grace came closer, leaning against his desk. You want advice? He nodded. Then don't push her, Grace said. She's protecting her daughter. You'd do the same if you were in her shoes. If you want to be in Kayla's life, you need to earn it, not force it. David sighed. I don't have time for slow. Then you'll lose both of them again, Grace said simply. He looked up, meeting his sister's gaze. She was serious and she was right. For once, power couldn't fix this. Money couldn't buy what he wanted most. So he made a decision. The next morning, Maria found an envelope slipped under her apartment door. No name again, but she didn't need one. Inside was a letter, handwritten in neat, steady ink. Maria, I know you don't trust me, you have no reason to. But I'm not here to take Kayla away. I just want to make things right in whatever way I can. I've arranged for Ridgeway to review her application again. This time they'll see her potential, not her pocket. You don't owe me thanks or forgiveness. Just let her have the chance she deserves. David. Maria stared at the letter, heart pounding. Her first instinct was anger. How dare he interfere? How dare he make decisions without asking? But then she thought of Kayla's face when she talked about Ridgeway, the hope in her voice every time she said, "One day, Mommy, I'll go there." Maria sank into a chair, the letter trembling in her hands. For years she had fought every battle alone. She had sacrificed, struggled, and prayed for something better for her daughter. And now the man who once broke her was offering that very dream. It felt like betrayal and salvation all at once. That weekend, Kayla received a letter of her own. Maria stood beside her as she opened it, her small hands shaking with excitement. "Mommy, it's from Ridgeway," she gasped. "They said I can start next week." Maria forced a smile through the lump in her throat. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Kayla squealed, throwing her arms around her. "See? You said dreams take time, but they always come true." Maria hugged her tight, eyes closing. "Yes, baby. They do." But as Kayla spun around the room in joy, Maria's heart grew heavier. Because she knew this dream came with strings. Strings held by a man she wasn't sure she could trust. On Monday, Kayla's first day at Ridgeway arrived. Maria dressed her carefully, fixing the bow in her hair just right. When they arrived, the once closed gates now opened easily. A teacher greeted them with warm smiles and polite words, the kind reserved for families that mattered. Kayla looked up at her mother, beaming. "We belong here now, right?" Maria knelt down, cupping her cheek. "You've always belonged, Kay." But even as she said it, her eyes darted to a sleek black car parked near the entrance, one she knew too well. David stood outside, watching from a distance, hands in his pockets. He didn't move closer, didn't wave. He just watched. Their eyes met for a brief, electric second. It wasn't anger she saw this time. It was something deeper, guilt, longing, and maybe hope. Maria looked away first, taking Kayla's hand. "Come on, sweetheart. You'll be late." She didn't notice the man who stepped out of another car across the street. Older, gray-haired, with a stern expression and an aura of authority. He was watching too, but not with affection. As David turned to leave, his phone buzzed. A message appeared on the screen, one that drained the color from his face. From unknown. "You've made a mistake, son. The past should have stayed buried." His father's number was still saved under unknown. David's pulse quickened. He looked up just in time to see the old man disappear behind tinted windows. The past wasn't just returning, it was coming for him. The day Ridgeway opened its gates to Kayla Brooks, it should have been a victory. For Maria, it felt more like standing at the edge of a storm. Every smile from the teachers, every polite handshake from parents carried a faint sting of pity, as if they could still smell the struggle clinging to her clothes. She straightened her shoulders and reminded herself why she was there. For Kayla. Nothing else mattered. But someone else was watching from farther back. A figure Maria didn't notice, yet whose eyes followed every move she made. Harold Montgomery, David's father. The man who once told his son, "Montgomery blood does not mix with mediocrity." He leaned on a cane near the line of black cars, his silver hair slicked back, his tailored coat unmoved by the wind. The years hadn't softened him, they'd only made him colder. When he saw Maria take Kayla's hand, his jaw clenched. "Just like her mother," he muttered, still reaching above her station. His driver waited quietly, sensing the mood. Harold's gaze shifted toward the far end of the courtyard where David stood, unaware, distracted by his daughter's laughter. The older man's expression hardened. "Let's go," he said. Inside Ridgeway, Kayla was in awe. High ceilings, polished marble floors, classrooms filled with bright colors and expensive technology. It felt like stepping into another world. She clutched her new notebook, whispering to herself, "I'm really here." Maria watched her find a seat among the other children, pride swelling in her chest. For a moment it almost felt normal. Almost. But normal never lasted long for them. Across town, David was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone vibrated. The caller ID froze him. Harold Montgomery. He ignored it the first time. The second time. By the third, he sighed and stepped out into the hall. "Father," he said carefully. "Still pretending I'm not your father?" Harold's voice came through cold and clipped. "That girl at Ridgeway, she's not yours." David's stomach tightened. "I don't want to do this over the phone." "Then meet me," Harold said. "Same place as before. 10 minutes. The line went dead. David stared at the phone, his pulse quickening. The same place meant the private lounge at the Montgomery Tower, a room that had witnessed countless family ultimatums. He had avoided it for years. When he entered the lounge, Harold was already seated, drink in hand, the city skyline stretching behind him like a throne of glass. "You look tired," Harold said. "Guilt doesn't suit you." "I'm not here for games," David replied. "Why are you watching her?" "Because I still have to clean up your mistakes," Harold snapped. "Do you have any idea what would happen if the board discovered you fathered a child with a nurse from the South Side? They'd eat you alive." David leaned forward. "She's my daughter." "She's a liability," Harold countered. "And that woman? Her name is Maria. That woman," Harold continued sharply, "will destroy everything you've built. I warned you years ago and you didn't listen. Now you're letting sentiment drive you again." David exhaled slowly. "This isn't about money or image anymore." His father's eyes narrowed. "Everything is about image. Without it, you're nothing. You want to play Father of the Year? Fine. But don't drag the Montgomery name through the mud while you do it." David stood. "You can't stop me this time." Harold's voice dropped low, dangerous. "Don't test me, son. You think I don't have the power to make her disappear again?" David froze. "What did you just say?" A cruel smile touched the older man's lips. "I took care of her once, didn't I?" David's pulse thundered in his ears. "What did you do?" But Harold only raised his glass, taking a slow sip. "Be grateful, David. You wouldn't have your empire if I hadn't intervened." David's hand clenched into a fist. You wanted to hit him. Instead, he turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The last thing he heard was his father's quiet chuckle. That night, rain poured over the city again. Maria sat by the window, watching the lightning split the sky. Kayla had fallen asleep on the couch with her notebook open, pages filled with new dreams, drawings of classrooms, friends, and a stick-figure family, a woman, a little girl, and beside them, a tall man with a question mark over his face. Maria traced the drawing with her fingertip, her throat tightening. She couldn't keep lying forever. One day Kayla would ask about her father, and she didn't know what she would say. A knock startled her. She hesitated before opening the door. David stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes full of urgency. "We need to talk." "David, it's late." "It's important." She stepped aside reluctantly. He entered, dripping water onto the carpet. For a long moment they just looked at each other, the storm outside echoing the one between them. "What happened?" she asked finally. He hesitated, then said, "My father knows." Maria paled. "Knows what?" "About Kayla. About you. About everything." Her voice dropped. "David, you promised me." "I didn't tell him," he said quickly. "He found out somehow. And he's already moving. He threatened to." He stopped, unable to finish. Maria stepped closer. "Threatened what?" He looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "To make you disappear again." For a heartbeat the world stopped. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "What do you mean again?" David's silence was answer enough. The realization hit her like a blow. It was him, wasn't it? All those years ago, it wasn't just you walking away. He made it happen. David nodded slowly. "He told me you'd left town, that you didn't want anything to do with me." I believed him. Tears welled in her eyes. "And you never checked? Never came looking?" "I tried," he said, his voice cracking. "He shut every door before I could reach you." Maria turned away, anger and heartbreak mixing like fire and smoke. "Do you have any idea what those years were like for me?" "I do now," he said quietly. "And I'm not letting him control us anymore." "Us?" she repeated bitterly. "You don't get to say us." But before she could continue, a sound from the hallway made them both freeze. A soft creak of floorboards, like someone stepping just outside the door. David motioned for her to stay still. He opened the door quickly, but the hallway was empty. Only the flickering light of the stairwell remained. He frowned, spotting something on the floor, an envelope identical to the one Maria had received before. He picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. Grainy. Taken through a window. It showed Maria and Kayla at their kitchen table. Tonight. On the back, written in harsh black ink, were 6 words. Some secret should stay buried. Mitchum. Maria's breath caught. David's hand tightened around the photo. The man in the shadows wasn't warning them anymore. He was hunting them. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. It came down harder, drumming against the apartment windows like an angry warning. Maria stood by the stove, staring blankly at the coffee pot. She hadn't slept at all. On the table behind her, that photograph still lay under a paperweight, a silent threat that refused to leave her mind. David hadn't gone home either. He sat on the couch, eyes red, watching Kayla pack her school bag as if nothing had changed. She was humming, excited for another day at Ridgeway, completely unaware that danger had started circling her life. Maria turned to David. "You said you'd protect us," she whispered. "I will," he replied. "But I can't do it from the shadows anymore." Her gaze hardened. "Then tell me what your father is capable of." David hesitated, and that pause told her everything. Flashback years ago. David was 24. Ambitious. Naive. He had just started working under his father's company, Montgomery Industries. That was when he met Maria, the young nurse who cared for Harold's late wife during her final illness. Their connection had been immediate. Real. David remembered sneaking down to the hospital cafeteria every evening just to see her smile. When his father found out, he erupted. "You think you can bring a nurse into this family?" Harold's words had been like acid. "Do you understand what that would do to your reputation?" David hadn't cared, until Maria disappeared. One day she was gone. Her phone disconnected. Her apartment empty. Harold told him she'd chosen to leave, that she was ashamed of what they'd done. David believed him, until now. The flashback faded. David clenched his fists. "He's been pulling strings for years. I thought I was free of him, but I was wrong." Maria stepped closer. "Then what do we do?" He looked up, a plan forming in his mind. "We fight back. But first, I need proof, something that ties him to what happened before." Maria frowned. "Proof won't stop a man like Harold. He's powerful. Connected. Then we'll have to be smarter. Before Maria could respond, a loud knock rattled the door. They froze. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. David moved cautiously toward the door, peeking through the peephole. A delivery man stood there, holding a small package wrapped in brown paper. "No return address," the man said when David opened the door. David signed for it, suspicion tightening his chest. As soon as the man left, he tore open the wrapping. Inside was a tiny black box with a silver button on top, and a small red light blinking slowly. Maria's eyes widened. "What is that?" David didn't answer. He grabbed the box and ran to the window, tossing it outside. Seconds later, a faint pop sounded from the alley below, like fireworks swallowed by thunder. Maria gasped. "Oh my God, was that?" "Yes," David said grimly. "A warning." Kayla looked up, confused. "Mom? What's happening?" Maria forced a smile. "Nothing, baby. Just stay close to me, okay?" David's expression darkened. "He's escalating." Later that day, David went to Ridgeway alone. He wanted to see how closely Harold's people were watching. As soon as he stepped onto the campus, he noticed a man in a black suit standing near the parking lot, pretending to read a newspaper. Another near the entrance, checking his phone but never really looking down. David's instincts screamed surveillance. He made his way to the headmistress's office. Mrs. Lane, polite but guarded, greeted him with a corporate smile. "Mr. Montgomery, how nice to see you again," she said. "Kayla is adjusting well." "I'm glad to hear that," David replied. "I just wanted to make sure she's safe here." Mrs. Lane blinked. "Safe? Is there a reason she wouldn't be?" David studied her carefully. "You'd tell me if anyone had been asking questions about her, right?" Her smile faltered. "Well, actually, there was a gentleman who came by yesterday. Said he was part of your foundation. He asked for her student file." David's heart sank. "Did you give it to him?" She shook her head. "I told him we needed written authorization. He left shortly after." David exhaled, grateful but furious. Harold was digging deeper and closer. When he returned to the apartment, Maria was pacing. "You were gone for hours, David. I was worried." "He's watching the school," David said. "And he tried to get Kayla's file." Maria sat down, trembling. "This can't go on. Maybe we should leave the city." "No," David interrupted. "That's what he wants. He wants you scared, running. We stay. But from now on, you don't go anywhere alone." Maria swallowed hard. "And Kayla?" "I'll hire protection," he said. Quietly. She gave him a look. "You think money can solve this?" He met her gaze. "It's the only language my father understands." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. Then Maria spoke softly. "You can't fight hate with power, David. It'll destroy you too." He wanted to argue, but her words sank deeper than he expected. The next morning started like any other. Kayla laughing at breakfast, Maria humming softly, until the school called. "Mrs. Brooks," the voice said. Kayla never arrived this morning. Maria's world went cold. "What do you mean she never arrived?" she stammered. "I dropped her off myself." "Yes, ma'am," the voice replied, nervous. "But after she got out of the car, she didn't enter the building. We thought maybe she was with you." The phone slipped from Maria's hand. "David," she screamed. He was already reaching for his phone, calling his driver. "Get the car, now." They raced to Ridgeway. The guard at the gate said he'd seen Kayla standing near the fountain just before the first bell. Then a black sedan pulled up, tinted windows, no license plate. He assumed it was a family pickup. David's voice was shaking. "Did you see who was inside?" The guard hesitated. "Just a man in a suit. Older. Gray hair." Maria felt her knees weaken. David's face turned pale. "Harold," he whispered. They filed a police report immediately, but David knew it would be useless. His father had connections everywhere, Judges, officers, city officials. This wasn't just kidnapping. It was a message. Hours passed with no word. Maria sat on the edge of the couch, fingers trembling, eyes swollen from crying. David paced the floor like a caged lion. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered instantly. "Where is she?" A familiar, calm voice spoke. "She's safe," Harold said. "For now." "Where is she, Father?" David growled. "I told you to walk away," Harold continued. "But you didn't listen. So, I had to remind you who's in control. If you hurt her—" "Relax," Harold interrupted. "I wouldn't harm my own granddaughter. But you need to remember that every action has consequences." David's voice trembled with rage. "You're a monster." "No," Harold said coldly. "I'm a realist. You still have a chance to fix this, David. Cut ties with that woman and I'll return the girl. Keep defying me, and she disappears for good." The line went dead. David's hand shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. Maria's eyes searched his face in panic. What did he say? He looked up, tears of fury glistening in his eyes. "He's got Kayla." As thunder rumbled outside, David swore under his breath. "He took my daughter, but this time he's the one who's going to disappear." Maria had never known fear like this. Not the fear of poverty or of rejection, but the kind that steals the breath from your lungs and leaves only silence behind. Kayla was gone. Her laughter, her warmth, her small hand that always reached for hers, gone, replaced by the echo of Harold Montgomery's voice. David stood near the window, phone in hand, face pale. "The police can't trace the call," he said quietly. "He's using an encrypted line. He planned this perfectly." Maria's eyes burned from crying. "Then we don't wait on the police. We find her ourselves." He turned to her. "You don't know what you're saying. My father, he's not a man you just find. He's a man you survive." Maria stepped closer, voice steady. "Then teach me how." They started that night. David drove to one of his company's private security offices, a sleek building hidden behind tinted glass in the downtown district. Inside, he met his head of security, a broad man with sharp eyes named Ryan Pierce. David trusted him more than anyone outside of Maria. "Ryan," David began, "I need to locate someone." Discreetly. Ryan nodded. "Who's the target?" David hesitated. "My father." That made Ryan pause. He'd worked long enough to know Harold Montgomery was untouchable, a man who could make problems vanish without leaving a fingerprint. Still, Ryan said, "All right. You'll get my best." Maria watched from the corner as David laid out what little they had: the phone call, the black sedan, and the last known sighting near Ridgeway. Ryan studied the data, then typed rapidly. If the car didn't have plates, it might have been registered through a private network. "I'll cross-check Ridgeway's surveillance feeds." Within minutes, grainy footage filled the screen. Kayla standing near the fountain, the car pulling up, a man stepping out in a dark overcoat. Ryan froze the frame. "That's not Harold." David frowned. "What?" Ryan zoomed in. The man's build was leaner, his movements younger. His hair wasn't fully gray, streaked, yes, but not Harold's silver white. Maria's heart pounded. "Then who is it?" Ryan's voice dropped. "Someone else is working with him." Hours later, they sat in silence. The footage replayed on loop, each second slicing through Maria's heart. David ran his hand through his hair. "This isn't how he operates. My father's too proud to get his hands dirty." Maria whispered, "Then maybe this isn't about pride. Maybe it's about punishment." David met her eyes. "You think he's trying to hurt me through her?" "I think he already is," she said softly. Ryan interrupted. "Wait, I've got something." He zoomed in again, focusing on the reflection in the car's mirror. "Look at this. There's another car behind them. A black SUV. That one has plates." He typed rapidly, tracing the numbers. The system beeped. "Registered to Montgomery Holdings. Ryan said. But the driver's name doesn't match any employee on record. David leaned closer. Who is it? Ryan hesitated before reading the name. James Caldwell. David froze. James? He whispered. That's my father's personal assistant. But he's been with him for over 20 years. Loyal to the end. Maria's pulse quickened. Then he's the one who took her. Ryan nodded. Looks that way. But there's more. The GPS logs show that SUV left Ridgeway and drove out past the city limits. Toward the Montgomery estate. David grabbed his coat. That's where we start. The Montgomery estate sat on the outskirts of town, a sprawling mansion surrounded by acres of forest, iron gates, and secrets buried under marble floors. As their car approached, the headlights cut through thick mist. The night air was sharp and heavy with rain. Ryan parked behind the tree line. Security's tight, he whispered. Motion sensors, cameras, maybe drones. We'll have to move fast. David scanned the grounds with binoculars. There's a service tunnel under the east wing. My mother used to sneak out through it. It leads straight to the cellar. Maria took a deep breath. Then that's how we get in. They moved quietly through the wet grass, crouched low. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound threatened to give them away. When they reached the rusted gate leading to the tunnel, David used a crowbar to pry it open. The air inside was damp and cold, smelling of earth and secrets. Maria followed him in. Her hands trembled, but her heart stayed firm. I'm coming for you, baby, she whispered. Inside the cellar, faint light flickered from a single bulb overhead. The silence was suffocating. David motioned for them to stay quiet. He reached the top of the stairs, pressed his ear to the door and froze. Voices. 2 men. He couldn't make out every word, but one phrase chilled him to the bone. The girl stays until the boss says otherwise. Maria's eyes widened. She's here. David nodded. Stay behind me. He pushed the door open slowly, but before they could step through, a loud metallic click filled the air. Put your hands where I can see them, a voice ordered. From the shadows stepped James Caldwell, Harold's assistant, holding a gun. Maria gasped. Where's my daughter? James' expression was cold, unreadable. Safe. For now. David stepped forward. James, you don't want to do this. I warned you years ago, David, James said. Your father doesn't forgive disobedience. This was your choice. David's eyes narrowed. You're working for him. I should have known. James' lips twitched. Working with him, he corrected. But not for the reasons you think. Maria frowned. What do you mean? James looked at her, then lowered the gun slightly. Harold's dying. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. David's jaw tightened. You're lying. He's been sick for months, James said quietly. Heart failure. He's desperate to secure his legacy before he goes. He thinks if he controls the next generation, you and the girl, he wins. Maria's heart pounded. Then why take Kayla? Because he's not the only one who's dying, James said, his tone darkening. He thinks she's the cure. David blinked. The cure? James hesitated. Then slowly he said, You don't know, do you? Know what? David demanded. James took a breath. Harold's illness, it's genetic. The same condition your mother had. The same one you might have passed to your daughter. Maria's face went pale. No. David staggered back, shaking his head. That can't be true. It is, James said. Your father believes if he can sequence her DNA, he might find a treatment to save himself. That's why he took her, not just to hurt you but to save his own life. Maria's voice trembled. He's experimenting on a child? James didn't answer. His silence said everything. David's rage exploded. Where is she? Before James could respond, a loud noise echoed from upstairs, footsteps, shouting. James looked toward the sound, then back at them. Security's coming. You have 2 minutes before they seal this wing. He tossed David a small keycard. That opens the west exit. She's in the lab's second floor. Go. Now. Maria stared stunned. Why are you helping us? James' eyes softened just slightly. Because I'm tired of cleaning up his sins. Then he turned away. David grabbed Maria's hand. Come on. They sprinted up the stairs, the house shaking with movement. Shadows crossed the hallways, guards shouting orders. Maria's breath came in gasps. David, what if we're too late? We won't be, he said through gritted teeth. But when they reached the second floor and burst through the lab door, the room was empty. Kayla was gone. Only a note remained on the table, written in Harold's familiar hand. You should have stayed away. Now it's too late. Maria sank to her knees, gripping the note. He's one step ahead of us, she whispered. David clenched his fists. Then we stop playing defense. He wants a war, he's got one. The mansion's alarms screamed through the corridors, echoing off the marble walls like war sirens. Maria and David sprinted through the hall, breathless, hearts pounding in unison. Every hallway looked the same, endless portraits, glittering chandeliers, and the ghostly echo of Harold Montgomery's empire watching them from the shadows. Where's the west exit? Maria gasped. David swiped the keycard James had given them across a metal door. The lock clicked open. They pushed through into the night air, the chill slicing through their clothes like knives. Behind them, guards shouted. A spotlight swung across the yard, cutting through the fog. Run! David yelled. They bolted through the trees, branches tearing at their clothes, feet sinking into wet earth. Finally, they reached the road where Ryan waited in the car, engine running. Get in, he shouted. They dove inside just as headlights flared behind them. Another car shot out from the mansion's driveway. He's sending people after us. Maria cried. Ryan slammed the accelerator. The tires screeched, throwing up mud as the SUV sped down the winding road. The chase had begun. Talk to me, David, Ryan said, gripping the wheel. Where's he taking her? David stared out the window, thinking fast. If he's moving her, it won't be by public route. He'll use a private jet. He owns one stationed at the old Montgomery airfield. Maria turned to him, her voice shaking. Then that's where we go. Ryan nodded. It's 40 minutes out. If they're already airborne, we'll need another plan. The road stretched endlessly ahead, rain hammering the windshield. Maria's hands trembled in her lap. Do you really think he'd take her out of the country? David's jaw clenched. If it meant saving himself, yes. Half an hour later, they reached the old airfield, a wide, deserted stretch of concrete surrounded by hangars and the ghosts of forgotten wealth. The place was quiet, too quiet. Ryan cut the engine and scanned the area with binoculars. 2 guards at the gate. Another near the hangar door. David grabbed a flashlight. He's still here. Maria's heartbeat quickened. How do you know? Because my father always watches the fireworks himself. They slipped through a gap in the fence, crouched low. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the moon hanging faintly behind clouds. As they moved closer, Maria spotted it, a small jet parked outside the hangar, engines silent but fueled, ready to go. David pointed to the open cargo bay door. That's where they'd load her. Then a noise broke through the silence, the faintest sound of crying. Maria froze. Did you hear that? They followed the sound around the side of the hangar. Inside, dim lights flickered. Boxes and crates lined the walls, shadows stretching long. Maria's pulse raced. The crying grew louder. She pushed forward, and then stopped dead. In the corner, a small figure sat tied to a chair, head down, trembling. Kayla, she screamed, rushing forward. David followed, grabbing a knife from a nearby table to cut the ropes. But the moment the blade touched the cord, the lights exploded to life. A booming voice filled the room. Still predictable as ever, son? Maria spun around. Standing on the catwalk above them was Harold Montgomery, flanked by 2 armed guards. David's stomach dropped. You planned this. Harold smiled faintly. Of course I did. You think I'd let you walk into my home and leave with what's mine? Maria stepped protectively in front of Kayla. She's not yours. Harold's gaze fixed on her. Everything with Montgomery blood belongs to me. He turned to David. Do you remember what I taught you, boy? Power isn't about being right. It's about control. And right now I have both. David's anger burned hot. You call this control? Kidnapping your own granddaughter? Using her as a science experiment? Harold's voice hardened. You don't understand what's at stake. I built everything you stand on. Every dollar, every deal, every ounce of your success. Mine. You think I'll let it all vanish because of weakness? He gestured toward Kayla. She's my legacy now. Maria's voice shook with fury. You don't deserve her. Harold sighed. You sound just like her mother. David froze. What did you just say? Harold's lips curled into a bitter smile. You think she was the only one who loved you, David? No. There was another before her, the one who gave birth to you. The one I buried long before you were old enough to understand what she tried to do. Maria stared, confused. What are you talking about? David's voice trembled. He's lying. Am I? Harold asked. Ask him why your daughter's last name is Brooks. Maria blinked. What? Harold continued, because Maria Brooks isn't her real name. I changed it years ago when I made her disappear. You see, Maria, you're not just the woman David loved. You're the daughter of the woman I destroyed. Maria's entire body went still. No, that can't be true. David's voice was barely audible. What are you saying, Father? Harold's eyes gleamed. I'm saying you and Maria share more than heartbreak. You share blood. The words dropped like a thunderclap. Maria stumbled back, her hands trembling. You're lying. David's face turned white. That's impossible. Harold's voice was calm, cruelly steady. Your mother had another child before she met me. I erased her from history. Changed records. Hid the truth. But fate, it seems, has a twisted sense of humor. Maria's knees gave out. No, no, please. David shook his head violently. That's not true. It can't be true. Harold looked almost amused. Believe what you want, but the truth doesn't care. The test results are in my vault. DNA doesn't lie. Maria's mind spun, the world tilting, collapsing. Everything she'd built, every memory of love, turned to ashes. Kayla whimpered softly, confused by the tension. Mommy? The sound snapped Maria back to reality. She turned, untied her daughter, and pulled her close. Don't look, sweetheart. Harold's voice echoed above. Run all you want, but that child still carries my blood. You can't change what's written in your DNA. David's voice came out rough, furious. Maybe not, but I can erase yours. He grabbed Maria's hand. Go. Now. They bolted toward the side door. Bullets tore through the air behind them, guards shouting, chaos erupting. Ryan appeared from the shadows, firing a warning shot that shattered the overhead lights. Move, he yelled. They sprinted toward the car, Kayla clutched in Maria's arms. The engine roared to life and Ryan slammed the gas. Behind them, the hangar erupted in flames, a distraction from a small-time charge David had planted when they entered. As the glow faded behind them, Maria stared blankly out the window, her daughter trembling in her lap. David's hands gripped the wheel, his face pale but determined. David, Maria whispered, her voice breaking. Is it true? What he said. David didn't answer right away. The silence stretched painfully long. Finally he whispered, I don't know. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Then we find out, she said. And if he's lying, I'll make sure he never gets another chance to hurt us. David looked at her, pain, fear, and resolve in his eyes. Then the hunt's not over, he said. It's just getting started. The night felt endless. The car sped down the highway, headlights slicing through the fog like desperate prayers. No one spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of tires against wet asphalt and Kayla's soft breathing as she slept against Maria's chest. Ryan finally broke the silence. "Where are we going?" David stared straight ahead, eyes hollow. "To the only place left where we can get answers." Maria's voice was quiet, shaken. "A hospital?" David shook his head. "Private lab. One I used to fund for clinical trials. It's off-grid. No records, no interference." Ryan nodded. "Smart. If your father planted that story, he'll be watching every public system." Maria looked out the window, her reflection pale against the glass. "If he's lying, why did it sound so real?" Her mind replayed Harold's voice over and over. "You share more than heartbreak. You share blood." The words felt like poison, too heavy to swallow, too cruel to ignore. They reached the lab just before dawn, a small, discreet building tucked behind an old industrial park. The sign out front read, "Greystone Medical Research." Inside, the sterile white halls glowed under fluorescent lights. A lone technician named Dr. Emily Reynolds greeted them, an old colleague of David's from his days funding medical research. "David Montgomery," she said, surprised. "It's been years." "I need your help," David said immediately. "And I need your silence." Emily's eyes shifted between the exhausted faces before her, a mother clutching a child, a man covered in dirt and bruises, and a friend who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Come in," she said softly. "What's this about?" David hesitated, then met her gaze. "A paternity test. Between me, Maria Brooks, and her daughter." Emily frowned. "That's a big ask at this hour. But for you, I'll make it happen." An hour later, they sat in a dim waiting room. Maria watched as Emily sealed the samples and labeled vials. Kayla, now awake, looked up at her mother. "Mommy, why are they taking your blood?" Maria brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Because grown-ups sometimes need to find out the truth." David sat across from them, his eyes fixed on the floor. His hands shook slightly. "If he lied, if he made this up?" Maria looked at him sharply. "And if he didn't?" David swallowed hard. "Then I've been living a lie. Loving one." Maria turned away, pain tightening her chest. She didn't want to think about what that meant, didn't want to imagine a world where everything between them was forbidden. Ryan leaned against the wall, scanning his phone for updates. "Nothing on the scanners," he said. "No signs Harold's tracking us, yet." David nodded but didn't speak. His mind was miles away, replaying memories of every smile, every touch, every word he and Maria had ever shared. Could it all have been built on blood and lies? Hours later, Emily emerged from the lab, holding a sealed folder. Her face was unreadable. Maria stood instantly. "Well?" Emily hesitated, eyes flicking between them. "I think you should sit down." David's heart dropped. "Just tell us." Emily took a slow breath. According to the DNA comparison, Harold wasn't lying, but he also wasn't telling the full truth. Maria blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The test confirms a biological link between you two," Emily said carefully, "but not as direct siblings. You're half-related through a missing lineage." David frowned. "Half-related? How's that possible?" Emily turned the folder around, showing the chart. "Your DNA shows shared ancestry through your mother's, but your genetic distance is too wide for immediate family. It suggests a generational gap. My conclusion: Maria is likely your mother's niece." Maria's eyes widened. "So my mother was your aunt?" David's face went pale. "That means?" Emily nodded. "Your cousins, not siblings." Maria sank into the chair, stunned. Relief and horror tangled together in her chest. "So, it's still wrong. But not what he said." David exhaled shakily. "He twisted it. Made it sound worse, to tear us apart." Ryan muttered, "Classic manipulation move. Keep them emotional, keep them off balance. Emily continued, there's more. I ran a secondary test on Kayla's sample against both of yours. She's David's daughter, unquestionably. Whatever the old man wanted to suggest, he can't erase that truth. Maria covered her face with her hands, silent tears falling. David leaned forward, his voice breaking. Thank you, Emily. She gave him a sympathetic look. Be careful, David. Harold Montgomery doesn't forgive betrayal, especially from family. They stepped back outside into the morning light. The air smelled like rain and gasoline. Maria turned to David. So he knew. All along. David nodded. He's been playing this game for decades. Secrets, control, ownership. This was never about family. It was about power. Maria looked down at Kayla. He sees her as property. David's jaw clenched. Then we'll show him she's not. Ryan checked his watch. So what's the plan now? He knows you're alive, he knows you defied him, and if he finds out the test results, David finished for him. He'll come after us harder than ever. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what they just learned pressing down on all of them. Then Maria's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown number, you can't run from blood, Maria. Bring the child home before I do. Maria's hands trembled. He knows where we are. Ryan cursed under his breath. Oh. We wiped everything. David grabbed her phone. He doesn't need tech. He's got eyes everywhere. Maria looked up, fear rising in her voice. Then we need to disappear. David nodded. Not yet. First we finish this on our terms. Ryan frowned. Meaning what? David's expression hardened. Meaning we turn his own game against him. We'll use what he fears most. Maria looked at him. And what's that? David met her eyes. Exposure. Truth. That night, they checked into a small roadside motel under false names. Maria sat on the edge of the bed, watching Kayla sleep beside her. David stood by the window, staring out into the dark. I keep thinking about what Emily said, Maria whispered. That we're family through bloodlines I never even knew existed. David's voice was quiet. It doesn't change what I feel. She looked at him, her heart torn between love and disbelief. But it changes everything. He turned toward her, his eyes soft. It changes nothing that matters. My father's lies may have built this house of pain, but I refuse to keep living in it. Maria swallowed hard. And what if he's right, David? What if we can't escape him? David stepped closer, his voice low, steady. Then we burn the whole damn house down. Outside the motel, headlights flickered briefly in the distance. A black sedan idling under the streetlight. Inside, Maria pulled Kayla closer, unaware that the man in the car was already on the phone. Target located, the voice whispered. Inform Mr. Montgomery. The line went dead. The motel room was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. Maria couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old wooden floor made her heart skip. Kayla lay curled up beside her, breathing softly, holding her small stuffed bear tight. Across the room, David sat at the desk, his face lit by the glow of his laptop screen. He'd been typing for hours, a storm of plans and counterplans pouring from his mind. Finally, Maria spoke. You're still awake. David didn't look up. Can't afford not to be. What are you doing? He sighed. Building a digital trail. Something Harold can't resist following. Maria frowned. You're baiting him? David nodded. Exactly. He's been tracking us since we left the estate, maybe longer. If I can feed him the right data, we can lead him somewhere on our terms. Maria sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. And where's that? David's eyes darkened. To the one place he can't buy his way out of, exposure. The next morning, Ryan returned with supplies and a burner phone. Gas station 3 miles back, he said. Black sedan parked there for over an hour. I'm guessing we've got company. David nodded. Good. Let's make them useful. Ryan raised a brow. What's the move? David spun the laptop toward them, revealing a map dotted with false locations, banks, storage units, and private accounts registered under Harold's network. We leak breadcrumbs, he explained. A fake drop location, something that looks like we're trying to sell the DNA evidence. He'll send his people, not himself. That's where we strike. Maria crossed her arms. And then what? You can't outgun him, David. He looked at her. No, but we can outsmart him. He spent years burying secrets. We dig one up, something that could end him publicly. Ryan leaned over the table. That means we need proof. David nodded. And I know where to find it, the Montgomery Archive. It's where he hides everything that could destroy him. Maria frowned. And where's that? David met her eyes. Under the mansion. Hours later, the trio parked a few miles from the Montgomery estate. The sky was gray, heavy with rain. Ryan handed David an earpiece. We've got one shot. Once we're inside, we've got maybe 20 minutes before security rotates again. Maria looked nervous. What if he's waiting for us? David's voice was calm but determined. Then we finish this. They slipped through the woods, careful not to trigger the motion sensors David himself had once helped install. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound, a warning. The back gate was old, rusted, but still locked. David picked it quickly. They moved in silence through the overgrown garden, past the reflecting pool that once shimmered like a mirror of Harold's wealth. David led them toward a small stone gazebo. This way, he whispered. Maria blinked. A gazebo? David pressed a hidden latch beneath the stone bench. A mechanical click echoed softly, and part of the floor shifted aside, revealing a metal staircase descending into darkness. Ryan whistled quietly. Well, that's subtle. They descended carefully, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom was a reinforced door with biometric access. David pressed his thumb to the scanner. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the lock hissed open. Inside, rows of filing cabinets and sealed metal boxes lined the walls. The air smelled of dust and old secrets. Maria whispered, What exactly are we looking for? Anything that proves what he's done, David said. Fraud, blackmail, illegal testing. He's hidden decades of crimes down here. Ryan started searching through files while Maria kept her flashlight steady. Her heart pounded. Every shadow looked like it could move. Then, from the corner, she saw something, a small leather-bound journal labeled Project Descendant. David, she called softly. This looks important. He took the book, flipping through the pages. His face tightened as he read. Oh God. What is it? Maria asked. He handed her the journal. Medical records. Trial reports. Names. Maria's eyes widened as she scanned the pages. Children's names, test results, and code words like asset viability and gene sequence A. These are experiments, she whispered. On children. David nodded grimly. And one of the case codes is Kayla's birth date. Maria's stomach dropped. He used her? David's jaw clenched. He's been planning this since before she was born. Before they could react, a voice echoed from the top of the staircase. Touching discovery, David. Maria froze. That voice. Cold. Familiar. Slowly they turned. Standing at the top of the stairs, a gun in her hand, was Dr. Emily Reynolds. Maria's voice trembled. Emily? What are you doing here? Emily's smile was tight. Cleaning up the mess you just made. Ryan raised his hand slowly. You're working for him. Emily shrugged. Working with him. There's a difference. Harold pays for results and I deliver. David stepped forward, fury flashing in his eyes. You lied to us. You said we could trust you. Emily's expression softened for just a moment. I told you what you needed to hear. The DNA test was real, but you were never supposed to see the rest of the file. Maria's stomach twisted. What file? Emily tilted her head. The one that proves Kayla isn't just Harold's granddaughter. She's his insurance policy. David's blood ran cold. What does that mean? Emily smirked. You really don't get it, do you? Harold's research, the genetic work you helped fund years ago, wasn't about curing diseases. It was about creating immunity, building the perfect donor line. Kayla's DNA completes the chain. Maria's knees went weak. You're saying she's part of some experiment? Emily nodded. The final stage. Ryan took a step forward. You're insane. Emily raised the gun. Maybe. But at least I'm rich. Before she could pull the trigger, David lunged forward, knocking her hand aside. The gun went off, echoing through the chamber. A light shattered above them. Ryan grabbed Maria's arm. Go. Take Kayla's file and run. David wrestled with Emily, the gun sliding across the floor. She kneed him in the ribs, breaking free, and bolted up the stairs. Maria grabbed the journal and sprinted toward the door. Ryan covered her, firing one warning shot into the stairwell. Outside, the rain had started again, pelting the ground like glass. They reached the car, breathless, soaked, trembling. Where's David? Maria shouted. Ryan looked back toward the mansion. He's still inside. Maria's voice broke. We can't leave him. Before Ryan could respond, a deafening explosion ripped through the hillside. Flames shot out of the gazebo entrance, throwing debris into the air. Maria screamed. David! Ryan pulled her down behind the car as smoke and ash filled the sky. The ground trembled and then silence. Only the rain, steady and cruel. Maria stared at the burning wreckage, tears mixing with rain. He can't be gone, she whispered. He can't be. Behind them, in the flicker of the firelight, a black SUV rolled to a stop. The back door opened, and Harold Montgomery stepped out, untouched, unbothered, holding a silver briefcase. He looked at the flames, then at Maria. Now, he said calmly, shall we talk about my granddaughter? The rain had slowed, but the air still smelled of smoke and burning metal. Maria stood frozen, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through. The mansion's garden, once polished marble and trimmed roses, was now scorched earth. Out of the rising steam walked Harold Montgomery, calm as ever, silver briefcase in hand. Behind him, 2 guards flanked his sides, their guns visible beneath black coats. Ryan raised his weapon, but Harold simply raised a hand. If you shoot, he said quietly, the girl loses everything, including her mother. Maria stepped forward, trembling. You have no right to say her name. Harold smiled faintly. And yet it's my blood running in her veins. That gives me more right than anyone else. Ryan gritted his teeth. You're a monster. Harold turned his gaze toward him. Perhaps. But monsters tend to survive longer than heroes. He looked back at Maria, voice steady, eerily soft. Where's David? Maria swallowed hard, her throat dry. You killed him. Harold tilted his head. Did I? She froze. Harold took another step forward. David knew what he was doing when he entered that vault. He triggered an old failsafe, one meant to protect what's inside. He's alive, Maria. But for now, let's say he's contained. Maria's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Harold smiled. Would you like proof? He opened the briefcase and turned it toward her. Inside was a small tablet screen, and on it, a live video feed. David, unconscious but breathing, lay inside a glass containment room. His chest rose and fell slowly, a faint heart monitor beeping beside him. Maria gasped, tears filling her eyes. What have you done to him? Nothing, yet, Harold said. But that depends entirely on you. Ryan stepped forward. What do you want? Harold's expression didn't change. What I've always wanted, control of what's mine. Maria, bring Kayla to me and I'll release him. No harm done. You can both walk away. Maria shook her head instantly. Never. Harold sighed softly. Think carefully before you let emotion make your decisions. The world runs on deals, not feelings. I'm offering you a trade, one life for another. That's generous. Her voice shook with anger. You don't trade people like property. He gave a thin smile. That's exactly what you do when property carries billions in genetic potential. Maria's voice cracked. She's a child. Harold's tone hardened. She's the key to a medical empire that will outlive us all. Ryan's patience snapped. You're sick. One of the guards raised his weapon. Harold waved him off, eyes never leaving Maria. I'll give you 24 hours. Bring her to the place where this began, the Carter Bridge School gates. Alone. Maria's heart twisted. Why there? Harold smiled faintly. Because every story deserves a full circle. He turned to leave but paused at the SUV door. One more thing, if you try to run again, David's heart stops beating. I assure you, I can make that happen from anywhere. The car door shut. The black SUV rolled away into the mist, leaving only the echo of his words behind. Maria fell to her knees, sobbing. Ryan knelt beside her. We'll find another way. We're not giving him Kayla. Maria's voice shook. He has David. And if he's really alive. Ryan cut her off. Then we rescue him. But not on his terms. Maria looked up, rain streaking her face. We don't even know where he's holding him. Ryan thought for a moment. That feed he showed us, it looked like a containment lab. Not medical, military. Maria blinked. Military? Ryan nodded. Private facilities that Harold funds are often dual purpose. I've seen something like that before, near the old naval airstrip outside Charleston. We start there. Maria looked toward the horizon, determination burning behind her tears. Then we start now. That night, they reached a safe house Ryan used during undercover work. The small cabin sat at the edge of a dense forest, moonlight glinting off its rusted roof. Inside, Maria sat by the window, clutching Kayla's small stuffed bear, the only thing that hadn't burned in the explosion. Ryan set down a laptop. If we're right, Harold's lab will be buried under a front company. But even billionaires make digital mistakes. Every secret leaves a trail. He started typing rapidly, lines of code scrolling across the screen. He's got files under shell corporations, Montgomery Holdings, Ascendant Research, EvolveGen. Maria's eyes widened. Ascendant Research, that's what was in the journal. Ryan stopped. Exactly. That's the key. He traced the server's data path. Got it? Hidden relay near a decommissioned airfield in South Carolina. I can't pinpoint it, but I can intercept Harold's comms for a few seconds at a time. He looked up at her. You sure you're ready for this? Maria's voice was steady. He's taken enough. It ends now. Hours later, as the first rays of dawn touched the trees, Maria whispered to Kayla, who was still half asleep. Sweetheart, we're going to see Daddy soon. Kayla blinked. You found him? Maria smiled faintly, though her eyes betrayed the fear behind it. Not yet. But I will. She kissed her daughter's forehead. I need you to stay with Uncle Ryan for a bit, okay? Mommy has something important to do. Kayla's small voice trembled. I don't want you to go. Maria hugged her tightly. I'll come back. I promise. As she stood to leave, Ryan stopped her. Maria, you can't go alone. Maria looked at him, fierce, resolute. He said to come alone. If he even senses backup, David's gone. Ryan clenched his fists. You walk into that trap and you're both gone. Maria grabbed the small drive from the table, the data Ryan extracted from Harold's network. Then I'll make sure the trap catches him instead. Later that morning, Carter Bridge School gates. The same gates where everything began. Maria stood under the arch, wearing a simple black coat. The sun was barely visible behind gray clouds. Harold's SUV approached slowly and stopped beside her. He stepped out, immaculate as ever. No child? He asked. Maria handed him the flash drive. Her medical data. Everything you wanted. Let David go. Harold took it, studied it briefly. And how do I know this isn't another trick? Maria looked him dead in the eye. Because I'm done playing. He smiled slightly. I underestimated you, Maria. You've grown. I learned from the best monster alive, she said coldly. Harold chuckled. And yet you still haven't learned when to stop. He nodded toward his guard. The man pressed a button on a small remote, and moments later, a van pulled up beside the school wall. The back doors opened. David stumbled out, weak but alive, his wrists bound. Maria's breath caught. David. He lifted his head, eyes meeting hers. Don't trust him. Harold turned, amused. Still so dramatic. Maria took a step forward. You have what you wanted. Let him go. Harold slipped the drive into his pocket. Oh, I will. But there's one more thing I need from you. Maria froze. What? Harold's eyes gleamed. Tell me where you hid the original files. The ones that exposed me. Maria blinked. What? He smirked. Did you think I wouldn't notice the missing journal pages? You stole more than you realize. Her stomach dropped. I didn't hide anything. Harold stepped closer, lowering his voice. Maria, you're lying, and if you don't tell me the truth, your daughter's next. Maria's blood ran cold. You wouldn't. Harold's tone was ice. Try me. And then, a sound broke the tension. The distant hum of a drone. Harold looked up, frowning. From above, Ryan's voice crackled through a speaker. You should have checked your pockets before making deals, old man. Harold's eyes widened. Maria smiled faintly. You're not the only one who knows how to bait a trap. The drone dropped a small device onto Harold's SUV, a blinking transmitter. Ryan's voice came again. You wanted exposure, Harold? Say hello to the world's live stream. Harold turned pale as a red light blinked from the drone camera, broadcasting everything. Maria's eyes met his. This time, everyone sees who you really are. The drone's red light blinked steadily, the sound of its rotors slicing through the silence. Harold Montgomery stood frozen, the calm mask on his face beginning to crack. Ryan's voice echoed from above. Smile for the camera, Harold. The whole world's watching. Maria stared up at the hovering drone, realizing what was happening. The footage wasn't just being recorded, it was being streamed live. Thousands were already watching, commenting, sharing. Harold's face darkened. You fool, he hissed, looking up. You think this changes anything? Ryan's voice came again. It changes everything. Within seconds, notifications began pinging across Harold's phone. His company's name was trending on every platform. #Montgomery exposed flashing across screens all over the country. News stations were picking it up, anchors speaking in urgent tones. Maria could see it in his eyes. The mighty man who had always controlled the narrative was losing control. Harold's composure snapped. End that feed. Now, he barked at his guards. One of them raised a rifle toward the drone, but before he could shoot, another car screeched onto the scene, black sedan, tinted windows. Ryan jumped out, gun in hand. I wouldn't do that, he warned, aiming straight at the guard. That drone's connected to 20 backup feeds. You take it down, the data spreads automatically. Harold turned sharply, his voice low and deadly. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Ryan stepped closer. You're right. I'm dealing with a man who built his empire on other people's pain. And it ends today. Maria took the chance to run to David, who was still on his knees beside the van. His wrists were tied, his face pale. She cut the restraints and held him tightly. David whispered, You shouldn't have come. Maria pulled back, tears in her eyes. I had to. I couldn't let him win. David's gaze shifted to Harold. He won't go down quietly. Maria nodded. Then we make sure he has nowhere to hide. The live stream feed caught every second. The confrontation, the threats, the trembling emotion in Maria's voice. Viewers were glued to their screens. News anchors whispered live. It appears Harold Montgomery, the billionaire philanthropist, is being accused of human experimentation and illegal medical trials. Comments flooded in. Is this real? That's the same Montgomery who runs Ascendant Research. Who's the woman? Is she his daughter? The truth was spreading faster than Harold could react. Harold motioned subtly to his other guard, a silent signal. But Ryan saw it. Don't even think about it, he warned. Harold smirked faintly. You think you're winning? You're just another disposable pawn in a story you don't understand. Ryan cocked his gun. Try me. Suddenly the guard to Harold's left moved, not toward Ryan but toward Harold. In one swift motion he grabbed the older man by the collar, yanking him back. Maria froze. What are you doing? The guard's voice was low and firm. Finishing what I started. Harold's eyes widened. You? The guard ripped off his earpiece, revealing a small scar behind his ear, a military mark. You should have paid more attention to who you hired, Harold. You destroyed my sister's life with your trials. I've been waiting for this moment. Ryan blinked in shock. You're one of the whistleblowers. The guard nodded slightly, pressing Harold against the SUV. You think you can ruin people and walk away? Not anymore. For the first time, Harold's mask completely broke. You don't understand what's at stake. The world needs what I've built. The guard sneered. The world doesn't need monsters pretending to be saviors. Maria stepped forward, voice trembling. You ruined families. You took lives and you called it progress. Harold's voice turned desperate. I did it for her. He pointed at Maria. For Kayla. She's my legacy, the proof that everything I worked for wasn't in vain. Maria shook her head, disgusted. You don't build a legacy out of broken people. At that moment, police sirens wailed in the distance. Multiple vehicles were approaching fast, flashing lights cutting through the gray sky. Ryan looked at Maria. It's over. He's going to face everything he's done. But Maria wasn't convinced. She could see it in Harold's eyes, that calculating spark hadn't died. He looked around, saw the growing number of spectators filming on their phones, saw the officers closing in. Slowly he raised his hands. Fine. You want a show? I'll give you one. He reached into his coat pocket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a small black device. Ryan shouted, Drop it. Harold smirked. You think exposure scares me? You think I didn't prepare for this day? Maria's heart raced. What are you doing? Harold held the device high. If I go down, everything I built burns with me. He pressed the button. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the ground rumbled. In the distance, a low boom rolled through the hills. Smoke began to rise beyond the trees. Ryan turned toward the sound. He detonated something, probably the lab. Maria gasped. David's data, all the evidence. Harold laughed bitterly. Gone. Every file, every backup, every experiment. You think you exposed me, but you erased the proof yourself. Ryan lunged forward, slamming Harold against the SUV. You just destroyed hundreds of lives worth of justice. Harold smiled weakly. Sometimes, victory is simply making sure no one else wins. Maria stepped closer, her face pale but fierce. You may have burned your empire, but you didn't erase the truth. The world saw enough. Harold looked at her, the cold arrogance finally replaced by something else. A hint of regret. You sound just like your mother, he said softly. Maria froze. What? He looked down. She used to say that, back when she still believed in me. Back before I ruined her too. For the first time, Maria saw something human behind his cruelty. But it was too late. Police officers rushed in, surrounding them. Guns drawn, orders shouted. Ryan stepped back, letting them take Harold. They cuffed him, reading his rights. Cameras captured every moment. Harold glanced back at Maria one last time. You won today, but you'll see. The truth is never as clean as you think. Then he was shoved into the police car, door slamming shut. The crowd that had gathered slowly began to disperse, murmurs filling the air. Maria stood there numb. The smoke from the destroyed facility drifted across the skyline. The nightmare was over, or so it seemed. David walked to her side, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. But there's still so much left broken. Ryan joined them, nodding. We'll rebuild. And the truth, even without the files, will live on through the people who watched. Maria looked up at the fading drone, still hovering silently. Then let them see what comes next. As the police convoy pulled away, one officer quietly slipped Harold a folded note through the open window. Harold looked down, reading it with a faint smirk. The note had only 5 words. Phase 2 is already moving. He looked out the window as the city lights flickered in the distance, and whispered, Good. Let them think they've won. The next morning, sunlight pierced through the half-broken blinds of the safe house. For the first time in weeks there was silence. No alarms, no gunfire, no shattering glass. Just the soft hum of life beginning again. Maria sat by the window, staring at the rising sun. It should have felt peaceful, but peace had become a stranger. On the table beside her was a newspaper. Harold Montgomery's face filled the front page. Billionaire arrested after explosive scandal. Secret trials and family lies exposed. Maria traced her fingers across the headline, her chest tightening. It was finally over. But why did it still feel like something was wrong? David stepped into the room, his arm wrapped in bandages. You haven't slept. Maria didn't turn. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The smoke, the fire, his face when he said it wasn't over. David came closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. He's gone, Maria. They've got him locked up. There's nothing more he can do. Maria looked out the window. You don't believe that either. He sighed. No. Because men like Harold never stop. They plan for every outcome. Even prison. Ryan walked in holding his laptop. You're both going to want to see this. He placed it on the table and turned the screen toward them. The news wasn't about the arrest. It was about what happened after. The Montgomery Foundation's shares had mysteriously recovered overnight. Offshore accounts were being drained. A new board of directors had been announced. At the top of the list was a name none of them expected, Sophia Lang. Maria frowned. That's Harold's lawyer. Ryan nodded. His most trusted one. And guess what? She's claiming Harold's empire will continue operations under new ethical management. She's spinning everything, turning him into a misunderstood genius who sacrificed too much for progress. Maria shook her head. They're rewriting the story already. David clenched his jaw. Phase 2. Ryan glanced at him. What do you mean? David exhaled slowly. Before he was arrested, Harold told me he had a contingency plan. He called it Phase 2, said it would make sure his legacy couldn't be erased, no matter what happened to him. Maria felt a chill crawl down her spine. What kind of plan? David looked away. He never said. But if Sophia's taking over, it means it's already in motion. Later that afternoon, Maria visited the hospital with Kayla. She wanted to believe that returning to normal life was possible, that her daughter could laugh again, that people could smile without fear. But even there she saw it, Harold's shadow. The hospital lobby had new posters on the walls. The Montgomery Health Initiative, continuing the work that changes lives. Kayla looked up at the sign. Mommy, isn't that Grandpa's name? Maria froze. Yes, sweetheart, it is. The nurse at the counter smiled politely. You know, we're actually reopening the children's wing he funded. They say his research is helping kids all over again. Maria's heart dropped. His research. The nurse nodded. Something about genetic therapy. Revolutionary stuff. Maria turned away, her pulse racing. Harold wasn't gone. His work was still alive, still spreading. She pulled out her phone and texted Ryan. It's happening again. They're relaunching his programs under new names. That night, they gathered in the safe house once more. Ryan had pulled new data from the Foundation's networks. He pointed at the screen. Look at this. They've already transferred the old research archives to a new company. Different name, same patents. It's called Nova Gene Therapeutics. Guess who signed off on it? David read the file and whispered, Sophia Lang. Maria stared at the company's slogan flashing on the homepage, changing humanity, one generation at a time. She closed her eyes. That's exactly what Harold used to say. Ryan nodded grimly. They're continuing his work, but this time they're hiding it behind charity projects and medical grants. No one will see what's really happening unless we expose them again. David frowned. But how? They burned the original data. Without proof, we're just three voices against $1 billion machine. Maria's expression hardened. Then we find new proof. There has to be something Harold didn't destroy. 2 days later, Maria's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. If you want to stop phase 2, meet me where it all began. Midnight. No name. No details. Just that. Ryan wanted to trace it, but the signal was masked. Could be a trap, he warned. Maria nodded. Probably. But if there's even a chance someone inside wants to help, we have to take it. David looked at her worried. You're walking right into his world again. Maria met his eyes. Then it's time his world met mine. The same gate where she'd once been turned away for being poor now stood bathed in moonlight. The wind rustled through the trees, whispering like ghosts of the past. Maria waited, heart pounding. Then footsteps. A woman emerged from the shadows, tall, composed, her dark hair tied back sharply. It was Sophia Lang. Maria's breath caught. You. Sophia smiled faintly. I was wondering if you'd come. Maria took a step forward. Why contact me? I thought you were running his empire now. Sophia's eyes glimmered. Running it, yes. Believing in it? That's another story. Maria frowned. You're helping me? Sophia looked around cautiously. Let's just say I've seen what Harold was building, and it's worse than even you think. Phase 2 isn't about business. It's about control. Maria's voice trembled. Control of what? Sophia met her eyes. Of people. He perfected a formula, something that could rewrite human genes, influence emotion, behavior, even loyalty. He called it the Obedience Code. And Phase 2 is its public launch. Maria's blood ran cold. That's impossible. Sophia shook her head. It's already started. They're testing it under the guise of new medical treatments in children's hospitals. The same research you thought you stopped. Maria's voice cracked. Why are you telling me this? Sophia hesitated. Because Harold may be in prison, but he's still giving orders, from the inside. And if anyone can stop what he began, it's you. You're his daughter, and his biggest flaw. Maria's hands shook. Where do I start? Sophia handed her a small flash drive. This has everything, the hidden labs, the funding trails, the next test sites. But be careful, if they find out you have this, they'll come for you. Maria took it slowly. Why help me now? Sophia's voice softened. Because he ruined someone I loved too. Before Maria could ask more, Sophia turned and disappeared into the night. Maria stood alone under the cold moonlight, the flash drive trembling in her hand. She looked up at the stars, whispering, You thought you ended the story, Harold, but I'm just getting started. The wind picked up, carrying her words into the dark, a promise and a warning. Back in his prison cell, Harold sat at a metal table watching the small TV in the corner. The screen flickered to a live news feed showing Maria walking out of the school grounds. He smiled faintly. A guard approached. You wanted confirmation, sir? Harold nodded. The guard handed him a tablet showing a tracking signal blinking on Maria's phone. Harold leaned back, whispering, Good. She took the bait. He looked at the camera, eyes glinting with cold satisfaction. Phase 2 begins now. The rain returned that night, soft and steady, as if the sky itself was whispering secrets. Maria sat in front of the old laptop, the flash drive Sophia gave her glowing faintly in the dark. Her hands trembled as she inserted it, heart thudding in her chest. Ryan stood beside her, eyes fixed on the screen. You sure about this? Maria nodded. If this drive has what she says it does, it's the key to everything, to stopping him for good. The files opened slowly. Layers of encrypted folders, numbers, coordinates, and scientific terms filled the screen. David leaned closer, scanning through the documents. Genetic code mapping, neural compliance studies, emotional conditioning? Maria whispered, this is what Sophia meant, control. Ryan clicked on a folder labeled O-Code Trials. Inside were hundreds of names, birth dates, hospital IDs, all children from various states. David's eyes widened. These are real patients. Hospitals across the country. Maria scrolled down until her hand froze on a familiar name. Kayla Montgomery. Her daughter. She blinked, heart racing. No, that can't be right. Ryan looked closer. Same age, same date of birth, same hospital. Maria felt the air leave her lungs. He did something to her. David's voice was tense. Maria, we don't know that for sure. She cut him off. She was in one of his hospitals when she was born. He must have used her for his data, without me knowing. Ryan's voice dropped. Maria, this means Kayla could be connected to the code itself. Maria's thoughts spun wildly. Every memory, every visit, every medical check, it all came flooding back. The doctors who insisted on special tests. The nurse who always smiled a little too knowingly. All of it had been part of Harold's plan. Tears filled her eyes. He used his own granddaughter. Ryan slammed his fist on the table. He never stopped experimenting. Even after you ran away. David whispered, if the code's in her DNA, she might already be affected. Maria stood abruptly. I have to get to her. Now. At the safe house, Kayla sat on the couch, coloring quietly. When Maria rushed in, she dropped to her knees beside her. Sweetheart, I need to ask you something, okay? Kayla looked up with innocent eyes. What's wrong, Mommy? Maria tried to steady her voice. When you go to sleep sometimes, do you ever hear voices? Or feel different? Kayla frowned. Sometimes I dream about Grandpa. He tells me stories. But they're not bad dreams. Maria's breath hitched. What kind of stories? Kayla smiled faintly. He says one day I'll help people. That I'm special. That I just have to listen. Maria felt the ground tilt beneath her. Listen? Listen to what? Kayla shrugged. The voice inside. Ryan exchanged a terrified glance with Maria. He's already in her head, he whispered. Later that night, Ryan analyzed the data deeper while Maria sat by Kayla's bed, watching her sleep. He called softly from the other room. Maria, you need to see this. She walked over, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Ryan pointed at the screen. The obedience code isn't just a formula, it's a neurogenetic trigger. It's activated by a specific audio frequency. That's how Harold's controlling the subjects, through sound. Maria's mind raced. You mean like hypnosis? Ryan shook his head. Worse. It rewires the emotional response system. They don't even realize they're being influenced. David added quietly, and if Kayla's been exposed since birth. Maria interrupted, voice cracking. He can control her. Ryan nodded grimly. Yes, and maybe through her, others. Maria's eyes burned with tears. We have to remove it. Tell me how to fix this. Ryan hesitated. It's not that simple. The code is embedded in her cells. If we tamper with it, we could hurt her. Maria's voice rose. I don't care what it takes. I won't let him turn her into one of his experiments. David stepped forward, placing his hands on her shoulders. Maria will find a way. But rushing could make it worse. Maria pulled away, pacing frantically. He's always been 2 steps ahead. He planted this years ago. Everything I thought was random, the tests, the hospitals, it was him guiding her from the start. Ryan tried to calm her. Then we find a counter-frequency. If he's controlling her through sound, maybe we can reverse it the same way. Maria wiped her tears. Then do it. Please. Find a way. Meanwhile, in his prison cell, Harold sat quietly as rain tapped against the barred window. He hummed a soft tune, low and rhythmic. The guard outside shivered. "Creepy old man," he muttered, walking away. But deep within the prison walls, unseen speakers vibrated faintly, the same tune, pulsing through hidden frequencies. Miles away in the safe house, Kayla stirred in her sleep. Her breathing changed. Her fingers twitched. Maria rushed to her bedside. "Kayla?" The little girl opened her eyes slowly, her pupils dilating unnaturally. Then she whispered in a voice that wasn't her own. "He's coming, Mommy?" Maria froze. "What did you say?" Kayla blinked, confused. I don't know. I didn't mean to." Maria hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. Ryan burst into the room seconds later. "Maria, you need to hear this." He turned the laptop toward her, a live feed from a private prison channel. Harold had requested an interview. The world believed he was broken, defeated. But the feed told another story. He looked directly into the camera, smiling faintly. "My work continues. Progress cannot be jailed." Then he leaned closer to the microphone, his voice lowering into a chilling whisper. "Phase 2 begins in the mind." The broadcast cut abruptly. Ryan shut the laptop, pale. That wasn't a warning. It was an activation. Maria turned toward Kayla, who was now sitting upright in bed, humming the same tune Harold had just whispered on screen. David stepped forward, terrified. "Maria, she's connected to him." Maria clutched her daughter tightly. "Then I'll break that connection even if it kills me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. He made her part of his plan. But he forgot one thing: I'm her mother. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the dark forest surrounding the safe house. In the shadows, a small drone, identical to the one used weeks ago, hovered silently near the window, red light blinking. Through its speaker, a faint voice whispered, Harold's voice. "Obedience begins with love." The drone turned and vanished into the storm. Maria stared after it, holding Kayla close. "You'll never have her," she whispered. But deep down she knew the war had just begun. The world had gone eerily quiet. No news broadcasts. No internet. No calls. Just static. Maria sat by the lake as dawn stretched across the sky, her reflection trembling on the water's surface. Kayla slept in her arms, exhausted from the night's horror. Ryan and David worked silently behind her, trying to restore their equipment. Finally, Ryan muttered, "We've lost all contact. Whatever Harold triggered, it's global." Maria turned slowly. "You mean the symphony?" Ryan nodded. "Every tower, every satellite, every device connected to his code. He's everywhere now." David added grimly, "And if that frequency's embedded in the DNA of those children, this isn't just about sound. It's evolution under his control." Maria clenched her jaw. "Then we find where it started and we end it there." Ryan frowned. "You mean the original source code?" Maria's gaze hardened. "No. I mean him." By noon, they reached a small outpost on the edge of the city. One of Ryan's old hacker friends had left behind a secure system. Ryan powered it up, the screen flickering to life. Lines of code ran down, green against black. Then a strange signature appeared, encrypted coordinates. Ryan's eyes widened. "This can't be right." Maria stepped closer. "What is it?" It's coming from a military prison in Nevada. Maria's voice dropped. That's where they kept Harold. David crossed his arms. But he died, Maria. The report said his heart stopped 2 months ago. Ryan shook his head. That's the thing, the signals originating from beneath the prison. A restricted section not on record. Maria stared at the coordinates. He's alive. Ryan sighed. Or at least, part of him is. They drove for hours through the desert, the red sand stretching endlessly beneath a blazing sky. By nightfall, they reached a remote perimeter surrounded by fences and armed patrols. A government insignia hung on the gate, but the facility itself was dark. No movement, no sound. David peered through binoculars. Place looks abandoned. Ryan checked the signal meter. The broadcast's coming from below that main building. There's something underground. Maria's heart pounded. Then that's where we go. They slipped past the fence and entered through a maintenance tunnel. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The hum of machines echoed faintly through the walls, like a heartbeat buried in metal. Ryan whispered, "This isn't abandoned. It's sleeping." At the end of the tunnel, they reached a steel door with a biometric scanner. Maria pressed her hand against it. Nothing. Ryan crouched, pulling out his tablet. "Give me a minute." As he worked, Kayla suddenly clutched Maria's sleeve. "Mommy, I hear him again." Maria froze. "Who?" Kayla pointed at the door. "Grandpa. He's talking but not with words." Ryan's device beeped. "Got it?" The door hissed open. They stepped into a vast underground lab glowing faint blue. Rows of pods lined the walls, hundreds of them filled with transparent liquid. Inside each one floated a child. Maria gasped. "Oh my God." David's face went pale. He cloned them. Ryan scanned the data on the control panel. These aren't clones, they're neural prototypes. His perfect listeners. He was building vessels for his consciousness. Maria's breath caught. "You mean?" Ryan nodded slowly. "He's been transferring his mind." A deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome home, Maria." They turned. At the far end of the room stood a glass cylinder filled with wires and pulsing light. Inside it, suspended in a clear gel, was Harold's body, frail but alive. Maria's stomach turned. "You should be dead." Harold's lips curled faintly. "Death is a limitation of flesh. I simply evolved." Ryan whispered, horrified. "He uploaded his consciousness." Harold continued, his voice smooth and calm. "You always feared me, Maria. You said I wanted to control life. You were right. But you never understood why." Maria stepped forward, trembling with fury. "You enslaved innocent children." Harold's eyes flickered with blue light. "No. I freed them from the chaos of emotion. I gave them unity." "Unity?" Maria spat. "You turned them into puppets." Harold smiled faintly. "Even you benefited from my research. Without it, your daughter wouldn't exist." Maria froze. "What are you talking about?" Harold's tone softened. "Kayla was part of my project before she was born. You think your pregnancy was natural? The hospital visits, the unexplained symptoms. That was my work, Maria." Maria's knees weakened. "No, you're lying." Ryan looked between them, pale. "Maria, he's telling the truth. Your file was in the early O-Code archives. You were one of the first test subjects." Maria shook her head violently. "I didn't know. I didn't choose this." Harold's voice deepened. "And yet she is perfect, isn't she? Calm under chaos. Resistant to pain. She was engineered to lead the next generation." Maria shouted, "She's not your creation, she's my daughter." The lights around the chamber flickered as Harold's voice boomed. "She is both, Maria. The bridge between what is human and what is coming." Suddenly, Kayla stepped forward, her eyes flickering blue again. "Grandpa says it's time," she whispered. Maria turned to her, terrified. "Kayla, no. Don't listen." But the girl raised her hand, and every pod in the room began to glow. The humming grew louder. Ryan yelled, "She's syncing with the system." Maria ran to her, grabbing her shoulders. "Kayla, please. Fight him." Kayla's voice trembled. "It's too loud, Mommy. I can't stop it." Harold's voice echoed from the walls. "Let her ascend, Maria. Don't fight evolution." Maria's tears fell freely. "If she's what you call evolution, then I'll burn your future down." Ryan shouted, "Maria. The main console, it controls the neural link." She turned, sprinting toward it as alarms blared. Sparks flew as she smashed the glass and began typing furiously. Harold's voice thundered, "You can't erase me." Maria's fingers flew over the keys. "Watch me." Kayla screamed as light burst from the pods. The air shimmered with blue energy. Ryan yelled, "Maria, it's overloading." She didn't stop. "If I have to destroy you to free her, then that's what I'll do." Harold's final words echoed through the room, cold and calm. "You can destroy my body, but not my idea." Maria slammed the final key. The chamber exploded in blinding white light. When the dust settled, the pods were dark. The humming stopped. Ryan coughed, staggering to his feet. "Maria." She was kneeling on the floor, holding Kayla, unconscious but breathing. David limped over, bleeding from a cut above his eye. "Is it done?" Maria looked up at the shattered cylinder where Harold's body once floated, now empty. She whispered, "I don't know." Ryan frowned. If his consciousness transferred, he could be anywhere. Maria glanced at Kayla, whose hand twitched faintly. "Then we'll find him." As they exited the ruins of the lab, the desert wind howled through the wreckage. Ryan's laptop beeped once, a single news signal flashing on the screen. Transmission source, unknown device, status, active. A distorted voice whispered through the speaker, soft and chilling. "Awakening, Phase 3. Maria looked at the horizon, the rising sun reflecting in her tear-filled eyes. "He's not gone," she murmured. "He's just changed form." The wind howled over the desert as the sun began to sink, casting long shadows across the ruins of the underground facility. Maria stood beside the truck, Kayla sleeping in her arms. Her face was streaked with dust and tears, but her eyes were fierce, alive. Ryan climbed out of the wreckage, holding his cracked laptop. "We're lucky to be breathing. But the system isn't dead." David groaned, wrapping a bandage around his arm. "You saw the explosion, Ryan? Nothing survived that." Ryan turned the laptop toward them. "Then explain this." On the screen, a signal pulsed, faint, rhythmic, deliberate. Transmission source, satellite uplink. Location, unknown. File name, Project Symphony, Phase 3. Maria's breath hitched. "He's uploading himself into orbit." Ryan nodded grimly. "If he gets control of that satellite, he won't need wires or towers. He'll be in the clouds, everywhere, unstoppable." David looked from one to the other. "So what's the plan?" Maria tightened her grip on Kayla. "We end him. Completely." By midnight, they reached a safe house, one of Ryan's old hacker shelters. The place smelled of dust and burned circuits, but it was hidden and powered. Kayla slept on a couch under a blanket. Maria watched her, brushing the hair from her face. "She didn't ask for any of this," she whispered. Ryan looked up from his laptop. "She's the key, Maria." Harold designed her brain to interact with his code. That connection might be the only thing that can shut him down. Maria turned sharply. "You mean use her?" Ryan hesitated. "She might be the only one who can reach him where he is now." Maria's voice hardened. "She's a child, not a weapon." David said quietly, "He made her the weapon. The choice isn't yours anymore." Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Then I'll make it mine again." The next morning, Maria and Ryan worked side by side. The plan was desperate but simple. Trace the uplink to the satellite control hub and destroy it before the upload completed. Ryan connected to a private network, lines of code spilling across the screen. He's fast. Every second, the signal spreads. David loaded his rifle. Tell me where to shoot. Ryan looked up. You can't shoot the sky, David. But we can jam the signal from the control station in Phoenix. Maria's eyes widened. That's hundreds of miles from here. Ryan shrugged. Then we better drive fast. Hours later, the city lights shimmered in the distance like a mirage. But Phoenix wasn't the city they remembered. Roads were blocked by abandoned cars. Billboards flickered with one phrase in glowing blue letters. Symphony awaits. Maria gripped the steering wheel tighter. He's already here. Ryan stared at the signs. He's using the broadcast systems. He's turning the entire city into a transmission hub. David cocked his weapon. Then we fight him in his own kingdom. They reached the satellite control tower just before dawn. It stood like a monolith against the pale sky, silent, cold, humming faintly with life. Maria parked behind a ridge. We go in quiet. Ryan checked his gear. If we reach the core before the upload completes, I can sever the link manually. Maria nodded. And if not? Ryan glanced at Kayla, who sat awake now, her small face calm but unreadable. Then he wins. Inside, the corridors glowed faint blue. Every screen they passed displayed fragments of Harold's voice, broken but familiar. Perfection, unity, no more pain. Maria whispered, he's spreading like a virus. Ryan stopped suddenly. Wait, do you hear that? From somewhere deep within the building, a soft melody played, the same haunting tune Maria had heard in her nightmares. Kayla tilted her head. It's calling me. Don't, Maria said quickly. Ignore it. Kayla's eyes glowed faintly blue. I can stop it, Mommy. I just have to listen. Maria's heart raced. No, that's what he wants. But before anyone could stop her, Kayla broke free and ran toward the central chamber. The chamber doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, the walls pulsed with flowing light, like veins alive with electricity. And in the center, a massive orb of data suspended in midair, rotating slowly. Kayla stepped toward it, mesmerized. He's here. Harold's voice filled the room, echoing from every surface. My precious creation. You've come to join me. Maria ran in after her. Stay away from her. Harold's tone softened, almost human. Maria, you can't stop what's already begun. I gave you a gift, a child born to hear what others cannot. And now she will help me rebuild. Ryan shouted from the console, the upload's at 92%. We're almost out of time. Maria turned to her daughter. Kayla, listen to me. You're stronger than he is. You don't need him to be special. Kayla's voice trembled. But he says if I stop him, I'll disappear too. Maria's heart broke. I'd rather lose you as my daughter than let you live as his machine. The orb pulsed brighter. Harold's voice deepened, filling the air. She belongs to me. Maria screamed, "No," and pulled Kayla into her arms. The energy surged. Electricity crackled around them, lifting debris into the air. Ryan yelled, Maria. The console, there's an override code. If she links to it, she can delete him from the grid completely. Maria looked down at Kayla. You can do this, baby. You can stop him. Tears streamed down Kayla's cheeks. Will it hurt? Maria's voice broke. Only for a moment. Kayla placed her small hand on the console. The lights dimmed. A hum filled the air, deep and resonant. Harold's voice turned desperate. Don't. You'll destroy yourself. Kayla's eyes filled with light. Goodbye, Grandpa. The entire chamber exploded with energy. Screens shattered. The orb fractured, sending waves of blinding white light through the tower. Ryan dove for cover as Maria shielded her daughter. Then silence. The light faded. The tower went dark. Maria opened her eyes slowly. Kayla lay limp in her arms. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, but she was alive. Ryan staggered to his feet. The satellite's offline. He's gone. David looked around. You sure? Ryan nodded. Completely erased. No trace left. Maria held Kayla close, whispering through tears, You did it, my love. You ended the symphony. Kayla stirred weakly. Mommy? Maria smiled, her tears falling onto her daughter's face. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Kayla whispered faintly, It's quiet now. They walked out of the tower as dawn broke over the horizon. The air felt different, lighter, freer. Ryan looked at his laptop, then froze. Maria, there's something you need to see. He turned the screen toward her. Amid the static, a new file appeared, encrypted, unnamed. Ryan frowned. It's her. The file read, Kayla 01, transmission pending. Maria's face drained of color. What does that mean? Ryan looked up slowly. It means she didn't just delete him, she replaced him. Maria's gaze locked on the sunrise, her face torn between pride and fear. And for the first time she didn't know if the world was safe, or if a new symphony had just begun. The desert was quiet again. For the first time in days there were no drones, no alarms, no digital whispers in the air. Just the soft hum of the wind brushing against the broken tower behind them. Maria sat beside the truck, holding Kayla's hand. The girl slept soundly, her breathing steady, her skin warm under the morning sun. Ryan stood a few feet away, staring at the flickering laptop screen. He hadn't moved in hours. David paced near the truck, restless, his jaw tight with worry. Finally, Maria broke the silence. You've been staring at that thing for too long. What is it saying? Ryan looked up, his face pale. It's not saying, it's listening. Maria frowned. Listening to what? He turned the screen toward her. A faint pulse glowed in the center, rhythmic, steady, like a heartbeat made of code. She's still connected, Ryan said softly. But not to him. To everything. Maria's breath caught. You mean, she's... Ryan nodded. She didn't just delete Harold. She rewrote the network from inside. She's part of it now. David stopped pacing. You're telling me my daughter is... what? A system? Ryan sighed. No, not a system. A presence. The entire digital grid, power, communication, satellites, they're all running through her signal now. Like she became the guardian. Maria's voice trembled. But she's human. She was, Ryan said quietly. Now she's something else too. David's fists clenched. Then pull her out. Disconnect her before it's too late. Ryan's eyes met Maria's. If we do that, the network collapses. Everything she built to stop Harold, everything she's holding together, it'll all crash. The world will go dark. Maria turned to Kayla, brushing her cheek. She's just a child, she whispered. She doesn't deserve this burden. Ryan hesitated. She made the choice, Maria. You taught her to be brave. She took that lesson farther than anyone could have imagined. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. Bravery shouldn't cost her humanity. Kayla stirred faintly, her lips moving. Maria leaned close. Mommy, she whispered weakly. I'm here, baby. Kayla smiled faintly. It's beautiful, Mommy. So much light. So many voices. They're not angry anymore. Maria choked back tears. You need to rest. You've done enough. Kayla shook her head gently. It's not over. He left something behind. A door. I can close it, but I'll have to stay. Maria's heart dropped. No. You're coming home with me. Mommy, Kayla said softly, you always told me to finish what I start. David turned away, fighting the tremor in his hands. He had built empires, conquered markets, survived wars of money and power, yet none of it prepared him for this. He looked at Maria. If she stays connected, what happens to her? Ryan's silence was answer enough. Maria's voice broke. There has to be another way. Ryan hesitated, then whispered, There is. But you won't like it. Tell me. If we overload her signal manually, it'll sever her from the network. It'll bring her back. David frowned. That sounds like what we want. Ryan's tone darkened. It'll also destroy everything she's holding together. The city she stabilized, the satellites she's protecting. Chaos will come back. The world will collapse into blackout. Maria closed her eyes, trembling. So either I lose my daughter, or the world loses its light. A heavy silence filled the air. The sun climbed higher, painting the horizon gold and red, as if the earth itself couldn't decide between hope and grief. Maria held Kayla tighter, her tears falling freely now. She's just a little girl, she whispered again. David knelt beside them. Maria, look at her. Look at what she's become. You and I, we broke the world in our own ways. She's fixing it. Maria's voice cracked. She shouldn't have to. David took her hand gently. Maybe that's what redemption really is. We spend our lives running from our mistakes, but sometimes our children fix them for us. Maria met his eyes. There was no anger left between them now, only love, sorrow, and the quiet understanding of two people who had finally stopped running. Ryan checked the signal again. It's stabilizing, but not for long. She's holding back a surge, something big. If she loses control, it could fry every grid in the country. Maria pressed her forehead against Kayla's. Baby, you have to let go. Please. Kayla's voice was barely a whisper. If I let go, it all breaks. Maria sobbed. Then let it break. Let the world rebuild. Just come back to me. Kayla's fingers twitched. I love you, Mommy. I love you more, Maria cried. David's voice was low. Maria, if you're going to choose, choose now. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead, trembling. Then she turned to Ryan. Do it. Ryan hesitated. Are you sure? She nodded, her face drenched in tears. Bring her home. Ryan began typing, his fingers shaking. Overload sequence initiated, 10 seconds. The laptop beeped, the pulse on the screen turning red. Maria held Kayla close, whispering, You're my everything. My miracle. Kayla's eyes fluttered open. Mommy, it's okay. The beeping grew faster. 5, 4, 3, 2. Kayla's small hand reached up and pressed a single key. The laptop froze. Ryan's eyes widened. She overrode me. Maria gasped. What's she doing? Kayla's voice echoed softly, but it wasn't coming from her mouth. It came from everywhere. The sky, the earth, the air itself. Mommy, Daddy. I'll be in the light. Always. The pulse on the screen faded to white. And then silence. The laptop went dark. The hum of electricity faded from the tower. The air fell still. Maria screamed her daughter's name, shaking her gently. But Kayla's eyes remained closed. David knelt beside them, tears in his eyes. Maria. She cradled Kayla against her chest, rocking back and forth. She's gone. Ryan closed the laptop slowly, his face heavy with grief. No. She's not gone. Look. They turned toward the horizon. The sky shimmered faintly, golden rays piercing through the morning clouds, swirling like threads of light. Ryan whispered, She's still out there. In the signal. In the sun. Maria looked up, tears streaming down her face. And for a moment she swore she heard her daughter's voice in the wind. It's okay, Mommy. You taught me to be brave. Maria smiled through her tears. And you taught me to believe. Months later, the world called it the Silent Dawn. A mysterious global reset. Data restored, cities powered, corruption wiped clean. No one knew how or why. But Maria did. She lived quietly now, running a small community clinic in Arizona. Every morning she'd walk outside before sunrise, look up at the sky, and whisper a single name. And every time the dawn seemed to glow a little brighter. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they're small hands that reach into the dark and bring the world back into the light. Kayla Brooks was never meant to save the world. She just did it because she loved it, and that was enough.